architecture. Sabahat Mukhtar, Pakistan. She's an aspiring architect working in Karachi with a profound interest in the psychology of space and design sensitivity to create spaces of positive impact through architecture. The young panelist joining for this session is architect Husefa Haroon. She's an architect who graduated from IBSA. Through her practice, Anomaly Lab, she designs with an emphasis on material exploration and experiential sensitivity with research and solution-oriented designs on multiple scales and typologies, both locally and internationally. After the presentations, we have a 5-minute comment segment from the mentor. The Design United platform is now open for presentation. Over to Priyanka. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Priyanka and I'll be sharing my screen. So, is my screen visible?
Yeah.
So, the topic of my thesis is called People, Places and Pixels. The idea or the entry point for it was how our public spaces are highly commodified and also becoming increasingly banal, and how to introduce pockets of fun or pleasure within these public spaces. The basis of questioning a public space is whose public space. So the definition of what a public space and who it serves is becoming increasingly skewed. And what we think is a public space is only public for a certain strata of society. This, my entire sort of research then led me to intervene at a Churchgate station, specifically Churchgate. The reason for this was that Churchgate station is a site for human exchange of a large, at a large scale. Not only does it bring together activities of different kinds, such as government functions and retail, but it also becomes the intersection and the funnel to the city, where a lot of people sort of cross through this. And as a terminal, it provides more opportunity for pause. As well as the current design of Churchgate Station showcases a lot of potential for architectural intervention. I then went on to study Churchgate and the area around it, understanding the different types of fun or pleasure that you could experience around Churchgate as well as within Churchgate, and identifying what activities there are that you associate with not just purely function. I then went on to study the user groups and the journeys that they sort of undertake. So the user groups are broadly classified under these 5 categories, and then I have another small classification of the type of journeys that they take and how many pauses that they do. And studying this sort of led me to understand where could I intervene within Churchgate. So the intervention then happens on 2 levels. The public, which is the station plaza, and the private, which is the railway headquarter office, which is the building on the top. The public plaza includes spaces for amusements and fast-moving public lanes, and the railway headquarters, on the other hand, is a slightly more rigid intervention because of the association of the departments and the proximities within them. And the deviation from the banal here is in the way the office gets structured within these rules that people are comfortable with. The station then becomes our place to gather, our starting points temporarily, and it is primarily for this reason that it becomes such an important course of intervention. The concept is to take a basic unit of repetition, which is often understood as monotonous. It is repeated regularly, and it has almost become a symbol of the everyday banal. It is functional, and yet it is often overlooked as a space. And then the idea of this unit is taken and turned over its head. Each unit is looked at as an individual design space or a pixel, and it allows the user multiple experiences. The concept attempts to introduce these pixels of fun and pause in everyday life, which is the crux of the design. So what I did to begin my design was I took my site and I placed a rectangular mass reminiscent of the current form of the station building, because the current station building has its own image and its own identity that has made its house in the memories of the people who access it regularly. I have lifted this entire rectangular mass off the ground and created a void on the northeast side to allow natural light to enter. I have then made changes within this uh, void, floor plate staggered, so that the void sort of exemplifies the connection between the public, which is on the ground, and the private, which is on the, which is up the stairs. And then the additional FSI that I got by incorporating a data center is used to make rentable commercial spaces on the top that sort of shade the void and shade the void from rain, which is like a big problem in Mumbai personally, and also allowing like these punctures through it that create like a play of light on the ground floor, which sort of reflect the pixels on the ground. So the building is then divided into closed, semi-closed, semi-open, and open. So we have the open on the ground, and we have a semi-open concourse, which is followed by a closed office area on the top. And then we have the private, semi-public, public, and public. So the semi-public becomes a concourse which has access open to everyone, but it's still by the act of it being raised sort of removes itself from the complete publicness of the realm. Okay. I have divided the departments such that they stack and the double, like there is a play of volume instead of the departments just being a floor each as they are currently. This allows for more interaction within the departments and also allows each department to have its own breakout spaces. Right. So coming down to the ground floor, what I've done is primarily ensured that all the buildable functions of the station are limited to the part adjoining the platform. And then what this allows me to do is allows me to open the rest of the site up completely to the public. So if in case of an emergency, someone has to shut down the station, they only need to shut down this much. Can you see my pointer?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So they only need to shut down this much area, and then the rest of it is still open to the public and accessible to the public. I have the office core staggered across the station, across the site. And I have a public washroom, which has like a nice courtyard. It opens up to the pixels. It opens up to the pixels, and yet it is quite subtle in its entries and exits. I also have the bus stations which face the northeast side, which sort of tried to do is I've tried to incorporate the bus stations within the station itself, because the current bus stations sort of create like a bottleneck which doesn't allow people to flow in and out quite easily. So this allows the change of transport from a train to a bus to become much smoother. The access to the vehicular access is limited. Vehicular interface is limited. You have ramps to the basement for parking, which provides parking for the people, office goers upstairs. You have, right. And then there are these columns which are placed such that they become like a visual cue for segregation. So the path in the middle becomes a fast moving lane. And then you have the booking offices on two sides, and you have the subway exit. So what I've tried to do is I've tried to create these small light wells within the subway that provide, that add like a sort of directional sense to it. And also a bigger opening from where you can exit out to the entry of the station, and another exit which is much closer to the platform that allows people to sort of exit faster. Right.
Hi, Priyanka, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. Right. So this creates a hawker zone. I'll come down to the pixels. So these are pixels that I had made in order to introduce a different to introduce a different function to the rigid functions that we associate with Churchgate Station. So I have all these different type of pixels, that occupy the ground floor and allow public usage throughout the day as well as the night. This is some ways that the pixels can be used at the ground level and a few details of the pixels that are used. So this becomes like a eatery pixel where you have like a small eatery and you can go upstairs and sort of sit, and it has like a small seating for 2 people and so on and so forth. The concourse includes the railway canteen, which becomes a space of breakout not only for the railway users, but it also becomes an interface for the railway users as well as the as well as the people who work at the railway headquarters. And this is the basement where I have a subway which has a small run-on-the-go retail. This is a detail of the skylight for the subway, which has a planter as well as a seater, and that's how it goes. I will quickly run through how the departments are placed. And these become like terraces, which sort of terraces or simply staggered floor plates that sort of allow spaces that connect this office to each other, like departments to each other. I've tried to introduce visual connection to the public so that creates a sort of secure space on the ground as well. And this is how it goes. So this is the view from the first floor of the office of the ground floor. Right. And you can see how visual communication might happen within the office itself, where you have all these departments that now become much more interconnected than they were. Right. So these are a few details of the arch brackets that I have used to sort of hold these staggered floor plates up. And this is a narrative that I have developed of each employee. So a railway employee enters the station. He sort of stops at the railway canteen for a quick bite. He goes and socializes in his office, might go out to the terrace for a quick coffee or tea break, and then could go upstairs, to sort of bring a file or something. And I have, so the process of
Hi,
design
Priyanka. Sorry to
developing.
cut you in.
Yeah,
Can
I'm
you get-
done.
Yes. Yeah, thanks.
Right. Thank you. So I'll just to conclude, an introverted public space of rush, which is intended for only railway users, becomes like an inverted porous space. And a monotonous, disconnected, claustrophobic office becomes playful, well-connected, and well-lit. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Namrata Pandey from Nepal.
Is it visible?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Namrata, and my thesis revolves around the Bagmati River and the quaint line of heritage that hides in plain sight as forgotten remnant below the bridge that joins the two major districts, that is Kathmandu and Lalitpur. And it contains various memories and experiences that have been passed on through traditions and celebrations and rituals and even urban interventions that have accumulated over time. And the labyrinth of narrow and crooked streets, which once boasted of its glory, people, my numerous inhabitants, now paints a more nuanced picture of social stigma, which is concealed behind the facade of the metropolis. So the second slide here, it shows the Bagmati in its glory back in 1880s and 1950s. And this was a picture which I took last year during lockdown. Here the vegetation has capped the problems, but this picture was taken 2 months before the lockdown. And the Bagmati River and the abundant religious and social structures, they are the expressions of the consecration of the people for the society and mankind. However, nothing remains the same. And my site is located in the Thapathali, which is a tract of land along the Bagmati River, sandwiched between two growing municipalities. It is a triangular land where the south bank is delineated by the Bagmati, where on the western boundary we have Ichumati River. So it lies at the confluence of two rivers as well at the junction of two major roads. And the area is rich in 19th century temples and is one of the largest complexes in the area. And so the question is how to better understand the site that has a history of glory as well as blight and appropriate it in a meaningful way that regenerates the site and enables the public to better understand the history that surrounds them. So the objective is to challenge the in-between spaces that remain tinged with placelessness and deal with the space in such a way that it enables the city to benefit from its spatial narrative. So here, time plays a very major role in choreographing such sites, and my thesis revolves around how the successive layers have been added to it throughout time, and how it connects to the past as well as creates, and how the my thesis can connect to the past as well as create history for the future. So the uh, here we know that nature, where there are various evidences and remains that tells us a good deal of past lives on, and there are geological processes and the processes of accumulation of land and stratification. So the palimpsest metaphor explains how the earth's surface works similar to that of the parchment paper. Here there are level of interventions on the site, where site was earlier a land as a resource. Then we have temples coming up in 19th century, and there we have conditions before and after earthquake. So these are, the site has prominent views which specifically draw our attention, and moving through these spaces can generate different views and different experiences at different time of the day. And then there are elements of chaos that can be redeveloped in a meaningful way. So the main strategy is to connect the various dissimilar components that are present in the site through a narrative loop. So it majorly seeks to identify the fundamental identities of the site such that they become active participants in the urban narrative while engaging with the history of the site, as well as creating a dialogue within the evolution of the site. So here, history have been, the loop will consist of histories compiled from significant dates and elements designed taking inspiration from the site, from the element of surprise to exploration to framing views and perspectives, and also catering to the needs of users, because there are a variety of users in that area, from shopkeepers to employees to students to even blind people visiting that place, and we have monkeys and different kind of biodiversity. So here, this is a concept sketch which shows a new. This is the white portion is the existing buildings and monuments. These are the
5 minutes
satas.
left.
Okay, these are the satas which are existing in the place, and we have the temples. These temples are used as hierarchical points, and then I have this pencil sketch which is overlaid on the white on the existing, and a new circulation is inserted to articulate new spaces that acts as a choreographer of our progression through space by encouraging us to move in a particular direction and adopting certain positions. So through framing of views and layering of perspectives and disclosing views, the design creates a dialogue, tries to create a dialogue between the user, the culture, and the context, and also encourages pedestrian movement. So here, now, since the water theater in the landscape, it is an urban rainwater management approach which utilizes the ecological swales and then riprap construction. So it helps in framing the surrounding context with built form as a way to inform the user about the historic site that they are moving in, and at the same time erasing the gap between the community and the river through broad walks. This is one example of how route threshold and view works in the connecting the heritage zone and the riparian zone. And here, this image, this shows that the planning was done as a process of sedimentation. So here, it is a layered model of natural, cultural, and spontaneous, and design, and all kind of, it is like a transformative process. So all of them are superimposed into one design, to form a one design. And the experimental design components of the thesis seeks to engage the histories of the site in a unique and meaningful way, and through programs that maximize the infrastructure platform. And the narrative includes the elements such as temples and trees that are already there to confer a sense of continuity in the changing settlement around it. Then we have narrative of the existing place. It consists of akhadas, and then we have satars, which are adaptively reused by accommodating community restaurants, library, music museum of Nepal. And then these are various views in the space. And then we have a narrative of place which are redeveloped, like Nepal's Association for the Welfare of Blind. We have Traffic Prahari Bhavan, and then we have KMC Ward Office. Then comes the narrative of the place, which has active and passive programs. The site aims to reactivate the my thesis aims to reactivate the site through a series of diverse programs that together works as a sustainable system and encourages a growth. So here, water theater, galleries are used as educational programs that reawaken our awareness for the history of the site, and the recreational programs are introduced to tie to the existing fabric. So these are a few illustrations of the spaces. And then we have narrative of the loss, which has a play of underground spaces and intersectional spaces, and it frames the design which is put forward to aid the recovery of the underutilized portions of the site, which should actually never have been sent to isolation from the urban realm. So it accommodates history which is compiled from significant dates. So this summarizes my topic, which is the Bagmati Promenade, reselecting the forgotten remnant, and a sense of exploration and discovery through routes offer moment of pause and expansion. And there are thresholds which are composed of layers of lights and shadows cast by architectural elements, and it offers experience of space by framing important scenes by using hierarchical ending points. And this is the last temple, which is the Kalmoshin temple. And these are a
You have
few
2 minutes.
comparisons of pictures to illustrations. Thank you. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Namrata. Next, we have Irushi Gurush from Sri Lanka.
Hello, can you see my screen? Hello?
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Hi, my name is Irushi Gurukep. My master's thesis project was about reconceptualizing the traditional funerary archetype in Sri Lanka. Before getting into the crux of it, let me just give you a bit of background. So looking back through history, you can see that the architecture of the memorialization of the dead, it evolved from these megalithic stone structures to more formalized architectural forms. But their scale was so large that it allowed spaces of death and dying to be actually incorporated into the city rather than the marginalized system that you see at present. So the modern day cemetery archetype evolved from this 7th century typology of a churchyard graveyard. So since then, spaces of death and dying has been pushed to the fringes of urban areas and is often associated with kind of negative connotations. And death in itself, which is a natural progression of life, has become kind of a tabooed subject in modern society. And that is indicative even in our urban morphology with the australization of these spaces. So my presentation, my project actually started with the question of why cemeteries are basically memento mori versus what a memorial was at the beginning. So in terms of even there were like big issues that I addressed through my project the current scheme of things is that there are spatially contemporary architecture, funerary architecture spaces are lacking in terms of providing a healing experience for the bereaved, and also the fact that it is a highly resource consumptive industry with traditionally cascaded burials and even cremations, imposing a very heavy burden on the environment. So the project is conceptualized in that framework of things, with my project being is addressing the rethinking of urban funerary architecture and turning it from a negative space to a more positive space. So a memento mori to a memorial. So the project challenges the horizontality of the current scheme of things to become a more of a visible marker of memory in the city, and also aims at destigmatizing the concept of death through the sheer act of being a visible marker. So the project is located in the Borala Cemetery, which is the largest cemetery in Sri Lanka. The reason why I picked an existing cemetery for my project is because of the fact that rather than, actually mainly because I didn't want to go to and pick a greenfield site and create a cemetery in it, which is kind of what the problem is at present. And rather than doing that, and also to select a site that has already come to be known as a necropolis over the years. And there's also existing infrastructure that supports the funerary industry surrounding that location. So my project was a highly theoretical project where I did go through an extensive research process, looking at the different funerary archetypes that have been done in other countries. And Carlos Capa was one of my main influences in this project. His tomb in Bryan Cemetery, and then his narrative language, the detailing were sources of great inspiration. This was also kind of enhanced and augmented by the teachings of Ando, Enrique Morales, and their directionality and how they have created a processional journey through their designs. Like these spaces were given special, like was something that I paid special attention to in my project as well. Additionally to that, my project is also about kind of giving an architectural framework to the newer types of after-death care services and after the alternative bodily disposal methods that are gaining traction at present. So I did look into the different types of scientific research that is there based, that is more ecologically friendly and would actually take death care in a more ecological sense than the current scheme of things. In that sense, Sri Lanka actually follows a very traditional set of rituals when it comes to after-death care services. We tend to go towards embalm burials or cremation services, which is like, as evident in this research process, is that it's highly environmentally insensitive. So while through my project, rather than ignoring the traditional systems, I'm also looking at how to augment the choices that are there at present, catered towards the varying spiritualities of modern society. So the theoretical underpinning is how architecture can support this rethinking and be a catalyst for social change by creating a vertical cemetery rather than going with the horizontal archetype at present. So my project actually lies in the intersection between concepts of death, memory, and the urban life. So while looking at the concept, my concept actually deals with two aspects related to death. Having architectural spaces that would enable the bereaved to deal with their loss and grief processes, as well as dealing with the concept of memory, which is lacking in the current typology of funerary architecture. So the idea was to take this concept of a tomb or a monument, which is the memorial dimension of architecture, and to make it a commemorative marker that would commemorate the memory of all inhabitants of the city. So this was actually one of my first models right at the beginning, like a conceptual model, which still had that idea of a axial pathway, which is very directional, culminating in a memorial tower. So rather than kind of reconfigure the entire site, what I chose to do is to utilize the existing pathways and the funerary processional pathways and incorporate how my building can enhance and augment that existing character. So as you can see from in the right-hand side corner, the building, that structure would inhabit the ceremonial halls, and there's a directional pathway that will climb to the committal areas, which would house the cremation halls, and the tower will be where interment of bodies will happen. Rather than take you through my drawings, I would like to show a small video so that it will show you the directional path much better. So the scheme has a network of processional paths that lead up to the entrance pavilion, which is also as a transitional space. So this is the processional path that will lead to the building. So the entrance pavilion is a transitional space between the committal building on your left and the ceremonial halls on your right. So the act of descent is into the ceremonial halls was to create a kind of disconnection between everyday reality and for the user to have a more immersive experience that is not disrupted by the ongoings of the surrounding areas. The courtyard space actually provides a space of like a buffer zone between the funerary halls, because that would allow so that there wouldn't be any disruptions between the spaces. And the halls are also designed in such a way that there would be would allow for specializations according to the different religious ceremonies that would take place, etc. So the narrative of spaces was also inspired by the works of Ando, Scarpa, and was with the intention of creating an ambience of reflection and contemplation. So you can see this is the starting point of the processional pathway. It's an axial route connecting the ceremony halls to the tower. The idea was to kind of create special visual connections of the tower alongside this axial pathway. So that's also kind of indicative of that connection between death and memory. The users would ascend into a committal area, which is while you're visually directed to the base of the memorial tower. So that is where the journey of the bereaved would culminate. So the installation of the dead tree is what would directs you to the base of the memorial tower, with a full height atrium kind of denoting the ascension of the soul conceptually. The exit is actually through this kind of water feature that is teeming with greenery, to kind of symbolically symbolize a sense of like elevation of the grievance process. So I did also go into several detailing in terms of how microgeneration can happen very uniquely to the project, but also looked at how the project in itself can encompass this idea of like through its materiality, how it can, the building itself can tell a story of death and decay. So the copper plate, for example, around the tower is ideally meant to corrode over time and show change. And so it becomes that mark. It won't just become a marker to show, like, for show, but it also, through its decaying process, will showcase how death is common, and it's like a very common phenomenon.
Irushi, we request you to wind up soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Irushi. Next, we have Sabahat Mukhtar from Pakistan.
We request the presenters to keep time and wrap it up in 10 minutes so that we have time for the panelists to give their comments as well. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Sabahat Mukhtar, and I'm going to present my thesis approach, which is Healing Through Architecture, the Psychological Effects of Armed Conflict on Children. But before diving into the project, I would also first like to recite an excerpt from the poem written by a Syrian refugee kid and formalized by Nicholas Davis. It starts from, the day the war came, there were flowers on the windowsill, and my father sang my baby brother back to sleep. My mother made me breakfast and dropped me to school. That morning, I made a picture of myself with wings. Then just after the lunch, while I watched, a cloud shaped like a dolphin, war came. At first, just like a splattering of hail, a voice of thunder, and then all smoke and fire and noise that I didn't understand. It came across the playground, it came across my teacher's face. It brought the roof down and turned my town into rubble. I can't say the words that tell you about the back-end hole that had been my home. All I can say is this: war took everything. War took everyone. I was dragged, bloody, and all alone. So children struggle significantly during the time of conflict. They experience the most dominant effect. Their stress level also lasts longer than the adults. 18 million children have lived their childhood in conflicted areas. 3 million have been forcefully recruited as child soldiers. The number has been appallingly increasing ever since, with Syria considered as the #1 dangerous country for children living in conflict zones. As the number of children living in conflict zones is increasing day by day, it has now become more necessary to shed light on this issue and take care of the children, as they will be leading future generations. The atrocities have not stopped here. 6 major grave violations faced by children include abduction, killing, maiming, recruitment in armed groups, attack on schools, denial of humanitarian access, and sexual violence. 2020 marks the appalling era of conflict and ensuring acute humanitarian crisis in Syria. Over 13 million need support, and half of them are children. Approximately 49% children face violence, and more than 40% are not attending school. Thus, the outlook remains bleak. Around 85% of the children alone in Syria have lost a loved one. Bombardment of school, loss of home and friends have made them unable to foresee a stable future. These children move through life with deep-seated distress of living in war zones, facing psychological repercussions. Aleppo, the industrial city of Syria, contains over 80,000 children who need social support. This collage vividly shows how war has ruined a beautiful city echoed with children's laughter into land of ruins. This is how children differ as compared to children living in post-war or conflict zone versus children around the world. This shows the impending impact of war trauma and impairments in various regions of adjustment, for example, mental, physical, academic, and social well-being. The most important impact of armed conflict is that children who experience it often become violent and aggressive, imitating the violence while playing games and solve personal conflicts with aggression. Not only that, they suffer with PTSD, hopelessness, sense of interpersonal trust vanishes, resulting in hopelessness and worthlessness, which further affect their cognitive, mental, emotional, and physical health. A child affected by the conflict requires a lot more than basic necessities like sufficient food, shelter. However, humanitarian aid majorly focuses on that, and response to a psychological trauma is acute.
You have 5 minutes.
Children affected by war shows great adaptability, which can be used to promote resilience. Responsibility to protect these young should be there and help to mitigate the war trauma in a safe environment. This is where child-friendly spaces comes in, which is a safe place set up in a disaster-affected community where children's unique needs need to be met. These spaces help children to return to the normal routine by offering activities, games, and informal education. This is a case study from Tane Batara, who a bright future of war-torn Syria. It was an attempt to bring a smile for the kids of Syria to reimagine a space to remember, while simultaneously inspiring a proactive approach by inducing a safe playground, utilizing the basements of damaged buildings, avoiding additional construction. Occupying War was another winning entry of Future of Shades competition, which led the limitation of using fabric as the material. They filled up the voids within the walls of damaged buildings, giving a sense of security to civilians residing inside. Tulum Plastic School competition second winning entry was also an idea to redefine the architecture of learning environment and focused on children-centric design. Design concept. The work aims to discover how architecture and aesthetics can create an environment conducive to healing spaces and help to trauma faced by children living in a post-war zone. The design approach leads towards children-centric design, as building a space responding to the scale, proportion, and characteristics of user, children, building up environment, play environment. The idea is to work towards evoking emotions and bring a sense of happiness and contentment for the fabric of soul. It also create healing spaces which paves way for optimism and brings a sense of hope in children. Providing varying experiences through the spaces at the same time, creating a sense of safety, which is a primary necessity for children inflicted with war trauma. Keeping in mind the needs of the children, the program developed to serve as children healing a space amidst a post-war zone. It constitutes of quiet spaces required to enhance children's focus, assess the trauma, and help to mitigate it by psychological guidance. It includes counseling room and individual therapy room for one-on-one session, while sensory room and dark room serves for keeping children calm and focused on themselves. The active spaces are used for informal group therapies, constituting a creative zone, including art, dance, therapy area, which help these children who can't verbalize their feelings. Simultaneously, playscapes works on the mobility and physical effect of trauma. Open classrooms promote different learning speeds of children, of a school-going children. This informal learning session will also help them to continue their education. Lastly, the nature gives a therapeutic effect. The therapeutic garden is incorporated as planters, which evokes emotion through the use of senses. The need for temporary structures arises in the emergency situations. It offers quick construction and also easily transportable compared to a permanent construction. This is where scaffolding comes as a good alternative based on movable principles of construction. It offers modularity. The mantling and dismantling can also be done by community themselves, engaging them with each other, and can also be used as later in reconstruction phase. Since it serves as a skeleton rather than a secondary material for construction, conceived as adaptable to majority of the site in a post-war zone, thus requiring no specific site. Permeability, modular structure, and layering of textures and materials creates a sense of touch. It also evokes emotion, offers flexibility and connection of spaces, including a sense of transparency.
You have 1 minute.
So my street level plans basically shows that this installation has been done amongst this residential street, which has destroyed buildings on either sides, and the street has been revitalized and repurposed into a healing space for children, not only for children, but also for adults, and can be used in times of great need of communication. Then they have, my first floor plans also have a communal area for children. They have open classrooms and dance and therapy areas, and also some playgrounds. Playscape, open class, art therapy room, dance therapy room. Then they have individual therapy rooms, consulting rooms, and play areas on the second floor.
Hi, your time is up.
Okay, this is the last one. This is how a modular structure will be built up. These are some of the sections to show how the space can be playful, as well as not creating another space into destroyed areas, but utilizing the space already available. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabahat. Now we have a short segment, comment segment from the mentor architect Husefa Harun.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for showcasing your work and sharing your thoughts with us. It has been an interesting thought process to see all of you guys think about architecture so sensitively and people-oriented. It was an absolute delight to understand how, from an idea to an execution, and the process that you guys have been through. Thank you, everyone, for sharing it with all of us. So I'll start with Priyanka, who started with People, Pixel, and Place. I think it's a brilliant idea. I also quickly researched about the Churchgate station, and I feel that your choice of actually rebuilding it was a wise choice. I absolutely love the idea where the concept of pixel comes in, where it almost becomes these very inflowy spaces that sort of almost blend into these spaces. But at the same time, you've also chosen to highlight them with the way that they have been intervened within within your entire design. I just had a bit of a question or some a question that you can sort of further think about. You have so my first question would be that, let's say if your entire intervention in terms of pixels and the interventions that have happened within the public space, could it have happened on different levels? And the greatest potential that I would have seen in the entire space was the roof, that I think was something that you could have sort of explored a bit more. Maybe that could have become a public park or something for people to sort of experience a roof garden, perhaps, because with the urban density and the amount of people that come into the station every day, it's a hustle bustle, right? So maybe the like the people could also have roof as a space to sort of relax, and it could have been that breathing space that sort of goes vertical instead of horizontal. But overall, I love the idea that you've sort of gone through and intervened the entire architecture and spaces and design. Namrata, I think that you had immense complexity in your project with the entire because not only did you have to intervene in the existing architecture and the site itself, but you also had to deal with different timelines where the past was also there and present was also there, and you also had to intervene in a way that it sort of all ties up with how the future is going to be. My only question to you would be that maybe talk more about the sensitivity about how, because in your abstract, I think you had mentioned how you want to interact or you want to create a sense of experience that past sort of invokes and the memory that it sort of creates. So perhaps how does that land that has been there forever and will constantly be interacting with every timeline that will now come on and was and is, how does that sort of interact with the sensitivity? How do you play with the existing with the permanency of the land itself? Was something that I would say would have been more interesting to see if you had gone into the depth of how the timelines sort of interact with each other. Irushi, I think it was a very bold gesture to sort of, with the entire concept of cemeteries being horizontal, you took a bold gesture of sort of connecting, making a vertical architecture or a statement towards it, which we don't really see. But the fact that instead of death being something that's connected to the ground, you sort of took it vertical and made a connection to the sky. I think that has great sensitivity within itself. I just have a few observations in the sense that if you were creating multiple levels, could it have been multiple levels underground, or that was verticality in terms of like being above ground was the only way to sort of solve the problem of the span of the growth and horizontality that happens within it. I also like the fact that within when you showed us shared your views, you also sort of showed us the sensitivity where you've created these pause spaces and views through the like embedded nature within your spaces. So that was interesting to see. And you created this constant access to the tower of memory itself. My question to you would be, was it important for the tower to be a culminating point towards the end, or could it feel like a continuation of perhaps another journey? Because the way that you're sort of emphasize the fact that death is often seen as a negative aspect is because it's considered an end to something. But what if you had taken it as a gesture to sort of take it as a continuation in another form or off another journey? So that emphasis would have been very nice to sort of be emphasized upon. And I think you've sort of subconsciously done it with your tower also becoming from a very opaque material to translucent, and then it sort of vanishes into the sky. So perhaps that gesture should have been emphasized or mentioned about how it's a continuation of another journey, and that is why the verticality is also emphasized. But yeah, overall, it was a delight to see you explain your thought process through which you've sort of gone through. Sabahat, I think your project, another one, was very sensitively dealt with in terms of how to sort of give another second chance of like living and giving them quality experiences through ad hoc architecture. My observation would be like, since in a war zone there are architecture and buildings that are sort of damaged in a very organic manner. So maybe your interventions could not have been one dimensional, and they could have sort of seeped into the architecture within itself. So it almost sort of formed this organic growth that happened within an architecture that was demolished. So those are my comments throughout.
Thank you, Zafar. Thank you, Zafar. I request the senior panelists to give their comments as well.
Should I start?
Yeah, Chaya sir, you can start, please.
Thank you. Yeah, well, first of all, it's quite heartening to see students take such challenging projects and to see the kind of faith that they have in architecture, the faith that they have in aesthetic experience to ameliorate some of the most difficult situations of life. So both the crematorium and the war children's healing place, they both posit a great deal of faith in what architecture can do. On the other side, you have the public space in Mumbai, and you have the Nepal, the Kathmandu set of the promenade along the Vagamati. And there a different kind of faith in the ability to weave together, or the architecture's ability to weave various disparate things into a coherence is something which you see in these two projects. Now, there is also another kind of double that we see. Two projects, that is the Mumbai and the Healing Center, they use a neutral grid and populate it with whatever becomes necessary. And there is a great deal of faith in both cases in function, that if you put in certain functions, then there is a kind of, you will get a certain result. So functions such as playing or sensory stimulation in the Healing Center, and functions such as eating in the Mumbai public space, there is a huge amount of faith put in functional provision in both these. And on the other hand, the two other projects, they are putting great amount of faith in the monumentalization of certain certain phenomena of time. I'm asking the question whether one can have a third way. Would function alone, or would the aesthetic experience alone be able to do the things? There are some things which are much huger than architecture, like the kind of things that are happening in Syria. They're not a simple thing. They have to do with a huge amount of stuff. And it's not possible for architecture to ameliorate all of those. It's not possible for architecture to ameliorate loss by death. Should architecture leave a certain question hanging in the air? Should it have an incompletion? Should it have a potential for being understood as only a man-made response to something which is much bigger than humans? These are questions which remain for the monumental projects. But the question for the functional projects is that is coherence, is clarity alone the essence of freedom? Or are there things which are beyond what we can predict? And if that is so, then how does it happen? Both the Mumbai project and the Kathmandu project take the existing. The Mumbai project, for example, takes more or less the layout of Churchgate station as it is. There is not much change that is made in position of toilets, position of public facilities, everything. So it accepts that a public space has been found and tries to structure it in the same way the Kathmandu one. Then what is the role To what extent do you organize? To what extent do you leave free? These are the questions that relate to all the 4 projects. And I think I'll stop at that. We can discuss some other things when we come to the end discussion.
We'd request architect Sandeep Sen or architect Shayan Kumar Das to go next. Either of you.
Shayan, would you like to go or should I go?
No, sir, I think after you, please.
Okay. So I think Chaya sir has already covered, a lot of ground in the comments. So instead of, probably I would just like to add on, or probably, just add 1 or 2 layers very briefly. I think first of all, compliment the 4 students to take up these brave projects, I would say, in scale and in complexity. In terms of the Churchgate station, I guess the process in all the 4 have been quite rigorous. May not have been seen in the 10 minutes of the thing. Maybe the slides would have run fast sometimes, so emphasis would have been given to something else, whatever. So I think Churchgate station, just to say that particular project, it would have also been nice to include some slides of the context and how the context informs the station, where your roads, your surroundings, the way it has been functioning, and then how do you overlay this? So it pretty much the same lines as what Chaya sir said, but I would, it would have been nice to see a little richer process than to just directly dive into the station, even the, the railway line to be drawn, the bus stop, existing bus stop, and things like that. And how does it inform? It's not just a set of drawings. How did it inform? Because very functional. Okay, so how does structure, how does the placemaking and, movement, all of that. The second one, I think it's an extremely sensitive project also, the Bagmati River, and the weaving of the existing to the proposed is tactile in nature, and I think it is talked about. I think she's talked about it. It shows this high level of sensitivity. Probably again, I would say the process could have been highlighted, whether it was the drawings or the models, or the materiality, or how the built and the unbuilt are weaving together. I think so that is, again, I would say, again, a little more emphasis. So what happens in, how do I intervene in the sense of a built, as a sculptor of spaces, if I may use, or how does it work together, and the river, obviously, the dynamic dimensions of the river. Now, coming to the architecture of death, again, I think there the process, has been, whether it's the physical models or, the way, she's talked about the different ways of death and memory, as overlapping each other is very interesting, and how the ways it has been historically done. Maybe a question here, like the others, do we need to build as much as we are building, or can we build only as less? I mean, in inverted commas, do we always need to build as an architect? Is that our only profession, to build, or to leave it only as much as possible required? So the footprint, whether that word footprint, or whether it's the amount of FAR, FSI, whatever these words are, whether it's functional or whether it's required. Like, these are projects which doesn't come into that. Is the architecture of death, or the temporal nature or the temporary nature of healing through architecture, the 4th one, they have no such rules at all. Whereas the first 2 have those rules. But do we, whereas it's very sensitively done, I would again say that how much should we build as in a journey of as an architect? So that is what I would like to say for the architecture of death. And for the last one, I think it's very sensitively, again, thinking of the context. I think this one has, has looked at a context where you have buildings and the drawings and even the street between the buildings become a temporary structure. I don't know how long that will be. Continue to be as a temporary structure in the real experiential, if it becomes a real project. But I think the way it has been conceptualized, it's very interesting, and a very solutions-driven project to that extent. So I think all four, whether it's the pixelating or the river as the collaborator along with the existing, the surreal topic of death and memory, or the real issue which the fourth one deals with. All four, I think, in the short span that I have seen, I think it's quite a complete job. But yes, I think our language is drawings and models and whatever else requires to to explain the scheme, right from the overall to the functional to the materials and to the lastly to the senses, because it's these are spaces experienced from inside out also. So I think the completeness of the project through these our language of drawings and other formats would be nice. And I think what we always learn is that I think we should learn to time ourselves. I mean, it's a very very functional thing, but I think we should know where to highlight the key issues or what are we highlighting. So I think it's very important that if I'm given a certain amount of time, how do I operate within that? I mean, I'm just talking about whether we are a professional or whether it's a student, it's the same. So it's very important that academics should also inform practice and vice versa. It's not just a one way. I think that, yeah, that is what.
Sorry to interrupt, Shayan sir. We would love to hear your comments at the end of all the sessions since we are tight on time. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so sorry that I think spoke. I think
no, sir, it's okay.
Time ourselves also.
Yeah. If Shayan sir has something to say, he can give his comments
so.
as well.
Yeah.
So I was actually wondering whether if you are running out of time, that we only have a junior and a senior commenting. And yeah, I mean, I'm very happy to have saved my comments for the last bit. Is that okay, or do you want to hear something from?
Yeah, if you want to give the comments now, you can give it for sure. Then we can continue.
I think Josefa, it was a blast off, and she went into fantastic details of all the projects. So I think she has covered a lot. Thank you very much for that. You saved my time. And I think Neelkanji, I'm learning from you all. I'm just learning. I'm learning from all of you. There are great gurus here, and also there are contemporaries, and I'm sure, and also the young students or the young architects here. We are learning so much from you all. And also Sandeepji did also go into detail, and I think very, very valid points. But in general, I'm not going to take a lot of time, but in general, I think it was very nice. I don't know how you all pick these projects. I mean, how Varna and the team pick the projects, but it's a lovely mix of projects, which is like there are, half of them are, project specific projects, or they're like building projects. And then you also have your urban rejuvenation projects. So it's a lovely blend. But having said that, I think a general comment, which I was going to save it towards the end, was that as students, if we are allowed to pick projects, I think we have to be very careful. And I think we have to always be mindful of the projects we take, whether we can handle it or not. I have to tell you that I really enjoyed the process of doing your design. I mean, there's a lot of thinking. Everyone who presented today, I mean, there's been a lot of research into it. And I think in India, I'm not too sure how it's called in Pakistan and Nepal, but in India, it's called thesis project. And in Sri Lanka, we call it the comprehensive design project, which is the CDP. And I think Irushi, though she did share that, she did say that she was, the CDP was for her master's. What happens in Sri Lanka is that we have a 3-year bachelor's degree, and then we have a 2-year master. So basically it's a 5-year degree. And I think in India, it's either a 4 or 5-year degree. So basically our masters and your bachelors could be almost this, the kind of same level. So I think we are looking at a even playground here. And then but what I was actually going to say is that when you do an urban project, I think there's a lot to handle. I think Neelkant ji did mention that there's so much to handle. There's so much to show. So when you actually compare these projects together, sometimes you might think that, urban design projects are like, I mean, you want to see about a lot more, but then you find that it's not there. And it's simply because of the scale of the project. There's so much to handle. So I think for thesis or for a CDP, when you pick a project, I think it's generally good to know how much, the kind of time that a student gets to, a student has to work on, and then whether we'll be able to deliver such projects. Because jurors, at the end of the day, they actually want to see an end product. They really want to see an end product. They want to see whether it's buildable. They want to see whether, it's not as a concept. They want to check whether you're right. They actually want to see whether it's a project, whether it is buildable or not. Whether it's a project where you tend to, jurors and even a client for that matter, they want to go through the building. They want to experience the spaces and so on. So I think it's a general comment to say that we have to be very careful in when we, I'm not being negative. I'm being very positive. I think y'all have had fantastic projects. I've had a very good go this morning so far, and I think it has been very well described and analyzed by the panelists so far. But it's a general comment to say that in future and always, it's always good for students to know the amount of work that has to go into a project. Because if you get a complicated project, maybe it might show, though you have put a lot of work, it might show a half-baked project. Because at the end of the day, it's a process definitely which is needed, and what everyone is looking at, including your client, is the end product, the product. So I think let's be mindful of that. But nevertheless, I think it has been lovely. It has been lovely so far. Thank you very much, all of you. I'm going to stop there. Okay.
Thank you. I thank all the presenters who presented in the session 1, and also for the comments from the panelists. We will move on to the session 2 now. For the session 2, we have 3 participants. First is Vaibhavi Pujari from India. She has completed her BArch from VIT's PVPCOA Pune. She believes that good design truly connects man and nature, which promotes the coexistence of both. Her interest lies in painting, traveling, gardening, and watching documentaries. Our second presenter will be Varun Bapu from India. He is a final year architecture student at Vadayar Center for Architecture, Mysuru. He is currently doing his internship at Neelkant Chaya Architects in Ahmedabad. Our third presenter will be Shubham Nagarkar from India. He is a recent graduate from Brick School of Architecture in Pune, an artist by passion and a traveler and fashion enthusiast by soul. He loves to design and grow through exploration. He has always found inspiration in travel while pursuing architecture. Nature has always been a constant inspiration, and his interest in landscape design translates it into reality, by making him more empathetic and sensitive in his process of designing. The young panelist joining us for this session is architect Prajal Pradhan from Nepal. He is an architect and a landscape planner who believes that architecture is all about what and how one feels in the space. He graduated in architecture in the year of 2007 from Kathmandu and finished his master's from Sweden in 2021. After having worked in various firms, he started his current practice and office called A for Architecture in 2015. The platform is now open for presentation. Over to Vaibhavi.
Yeah, I'm sharing my screen, okay? Thanks. Are you able to see my screen? Bhumika?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
so
we are able to see.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Vaibhavi, and I would firstly thank DU for having this amazing event today. So my thesis topic is performative and productive urban agriculture. I've taken the site in Pune. So I would like to briefly introduce the concern and the need of the thesis project. So as we all know, with the growing population, the need of food will also increase. As the urban areas goes on engulfing its peripheral agriculture land, the problem to feed the increasing population is concerning. So the increased population will also spread urban areas, in turn pushing the consumer and the food production away from each other, resulting in larger transportation distances, no connect to the food, and lack of accessibility to fresh food. Thus, there is definitely a need of finding way of using lands available in the city and think of innovative agricultural solutions and implementing them in the urban areas. So due to the technological advancement, the growing food in cities have been possible and is being practiced in various parts of the world, bringing people to and also bringing people closer to their food. Urban agriculture not only helps to grow food in the cities, but also helps in various ecological, environmental, and social aspects. So after going through various events that have happened in history and all the technological advancements that has been happening in agriculture field, these were my following inferences. For growing food in cities, instead of creating a new food infrastructure, why not think of, which would need a new site and new services, why not think of implementing this in an existing services and how that could function and be used at a daily basis level. So this is when I started looking out in cities, like what are the different type of infrastructures that we use in day-to-day life. And this is when the idea of using the vertical space of the elevated water tower came into my mind. So further down, like narrowing down and having a site. So I took a site in PCMC. This is an existing site with 2 water towers. I've tried to reimagine this site wherein it could function as a multifunctional tower. Currently, what happens in case of water tower is, and majorly water tank sites is, these sites are usually and majorly RCC water tanks are constructed. The lifespan of RCC water tanks are comparatively less in terms of steel water tanks. And also once the damage happens, it is really very tough to repair these kinds of water towers because it's a monolith structure. So this is when I started approaching this is how I started approaching the site. So currently the sites are unused. So this is where I've tried to propose an alternative wherein this tower could not only perform the function of supplying water, but also include the function of cultivation, educating people about how they can grow in their available lands that are terraces or balconies or windows. So it could be a learning space and also create a much needed open space in the city. It could become a recreational space through community farming or public parks. So I have researched a lot about how water tanks are being constructed around the world and what are different type of architects doing like related to this water towers. So this is when I came about a water tank located in India, which is the largest water tank, elevated water tank in India. It is about 112 years and currently functioning. It's a steel plate water tank. So this is when I started to rethink the material as well. So this is my program, in which I've drawn parallels to the proposals of future agriculture towers and current functioning greenhouses. So I have segregated this into 3 aspects, that is economical, social, and environmental, in which the learning aspects comes and the growing aspect also comes in. So I have detailedly studied of what type of vegetables required, what type of sunlight conditions, soil conditions, and what are their growing periods, and what are the suitable surfaces that it could be cultivated on. So approaching to the site, aspects that I kept in while designing. First one was the orientation of the site, especially to reduce the cost of investing in artificial lightings. How can building make optimal use of the sunlight? So the building is facing to the south side, the growing area especially, and then there are staggerings so that maximum sunlight could enter the site. And as per the terrain of the site, the water harvesting and the public spaces have been segregated.
You have 5 minutes.
Yeah, so this is how the tower, the massing of the tower is. So the vertical zoning happens such that the water towers are there at the top, and then the growing areas. And then there are public building here where there is library and workshop spaces to teach people about urban agriculture. So these are what type of farming happens in the site, where all what type of crops could be grown. So this is how the soil-based and the public interface farming happens. Depending on the location of the farm patches, the vegetables have been designated to them. So coming to the floor plans, these are the floor plans where I've tried to include this modern type of hydroponic systems and which type of system is required to cultivating what type of vegetables. So this is a section cutting through the grow area, section B. So this is the public area. So this is the one cutting through the water tower. And these are the grow area, which is the south facade. So entire grow area happens in this process. There is the support facility here. And then there is germination area in this area. So this is how the services have been segregated. After studying what all services are needed to the water towers, keeping that in mind, and also having services that are required for an urban agriculture tower have been shown in this. So this is the detailed floor plans in which module of growing leafy vegetable type of function happens. So these are how the stages of the particular product happens in this. So there is a core that connects both the towers. So for the ease of accessibility. So this is the service area that I've talked about, and the front facade keeping totally for the growing purposes. So following by upper floors where rooting type of vegetables happen. And then followed by how fruiting type of vegetables happen. This requires the maximum sunlight. So it is kept in the upper floors. So these are how the stages happen. So this is how the skin section of my building works. Yeah, so I would like to conclude my presentation here by saying that my thesis was an attempt to bring people closer to agriculture and how people and the consumer could be brought together. In future, more human and innovative food infrastructures can take place. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Vaibhavi, for that beautiful presentation. I request Varun to start sharing the screen.
Hi, is my screen visible? Hello?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Yes, Varun, it is visible.
Hi, good morning to all the panelists. So I started with this idea of what the idea of Bangalore was in the earlier days, and how Bangalore was a very calm place, and like people would hang out in the neighborhood, and there was a lot of places for public recreation back then. And then as time went by, so it started becoming more commercial, and the ideas of malls and all of this started to creep in, and which was the whole reason that the inquiry for this thesis began. And I also started at looking how the whole idea of the ecology in Bangalore has been deteriorating, as Bangalore is a growing city, and then we definitely need more urban lungs for the city. That is how that was the other aspect that I looked at in the thesis. So I started looking at different cases around the world, mainly in Singapore and in Melbourne, mainly, of how they have created public spaces for the city and how it functions. So these were some of the cases that I studied. And then in India, how there are a lot of spaces that exist with different aspects in them, but there is no one particular place where everything could be seen at once, which is the other reason that to strengthen this thesis. And then coming to Bangalore itself, I started looking for sites, and then one of the sites that caught my eye was the race course, which is actually been given back to the government, and they were planning to. There are plans of building ministerial bungalows. So I thought, why not? I mean, since it's a 65-acre site, so this could also become a very good option for the site. And when the SWOT analysis was done, it was found to be advantageous, as it is also located in the central part of Bangalore. So then mapping different public events that happened in Bangalore, one can see that a lot of it happens in the central region of Bangalore, and they're scattered, but having one space for the city is important that way. So through my thesis, I actually studied in 3 different zones. One was the schematic zone, where I started looking at the vastness of the site and how water management could be done, and different ideas like the urban forests and wetlands and all could be incorporated. And at an idea level, I started looking at the experiential aspects of how one could actually go through the site, a pedestrian walkway and an urban farm and all of this. And in the detail aspect, I started looking at the built form itself. So mapping the things around site. One can also see that a lot of these public landmarks in Bangalore are located around the race course. So be it the Cubbon Park or the Majestic, which is the commercial area, or residential areas like Malleshwaram or even Chickpet. All of these are kind of located and around this, and this actually becomes an influence on the site. So I also started mapping the accessibility pathways from all of these and how it could be connected to the site. And especially also because the site is closer to some of the government offices in Bangalore, it makes sense to have like a recreation space for them as well when they take out their lunch breaks or tea breaks and other things. Coming to the immediate context of the site is actually surrounded by a lot of commercial establishments like hotels and other buildings, and having a sustainable program like an urban farm could actually bring in a symbiotic relation with these commercial establishments as well. So more studies on the site, and it shows the active zones and all of that. And coming to the water catchment, I kind of realized that you could collect through rainwater harvesting about 22 crore liters, and this can actually be stored to power the urban farm and the forest itself. So with regards to the urban forest, I started looking at how there was this Japanese technique called as a Miyawaki forest, which could help you grow urban forests in a very short span. And this could also mean that increased oxygen production and change in microclimate and water table and biodiversity as well. So coming back to how I started iterating the urban forest, I kind of realized an envelope around the periphery of the site could actually help one cut down the external traffic noise, since the site is also located in a very busy zone. So I looked at a lot of native species and their flowering properties, in fact, to kind of be used in the urban forest, which was native to Bangalore. So, and the other landscape interventions like swales and vegetated pathways. So coming to the urban urban farm, I looked at how throughout the year there could be produce with the crop rotation system, and eventually through the site how the urban forest could actually be situated. So this is just a small animation of how in different months the thing could happen.
You have 5 minutes.
Yes. Yeah, so coming to the build program itself, I was looking at how the different user groups around the site could actually intermingle to get a sense of all the programs that could happen, be the fields and the forests, or be the multi-purpose spaces, which Bangalore definitely needs because of the programs like the Ram Navami or other things that happen around. So yeah, that was the main idea. And the other idea of the certain forms like the trapezoidal form, which could be used as a skylight as well as become objects in the landscape, was looked at, so that one could relate back to the civic center throughout the site. So the basic zoning of the site was in a way that I looked at how there could be an urban plaza kind of touching the main road, and as one comes down, you come into the secondary plaza, and then you could actually walk under the underbelly of the auditorium building, which is the formal function. And as you come towards the back, you kind of have a smaller scale of the backyard scale of the civic center there, and then it kind of opens out into the lake, which brings out a great view, and there is a change in axis and all of this. So I was also exploring these volumes through the through sectional models to kind of relate back to what the scale could be under the belly, and then how it could relate back to the open spaces. Then some of the sections that were cut through longitudinal, which shows from the race course road, how it kind of slopes down towards the lake, and how the volumes kind of are in the public gallery and all of this. And some of the skin sections, which was used to mitigate the climate, the south sun, and how passive cooling could be involved in it and all of that. Yes. And with the facade, I started looking at how I could use a lot of elements from old Bangalore, which I was looking at the aspect of memories of old Bangalore. So the stone cladding, or even be the wood to kind of soften the facade because of the largeness of the building mass. And then the idea of usage of Pompeian red to accentuate the colonial colors that were used in Bangalore and all of this. And one of the ideas that I looked at through the thesis was this idea of an elevated walkway, which I thought would give a bird's eye view into the civic center. So I explored this through the serial vision process of how the elevated walkway could actually react with the different volumes and with the openness. And as one walks and comes towards the lake, it kind of opens out into the lake. So there are different spaces that are created as you walk through. And yes, this was another idea I was exploring with the skin section of how I could actually make a breathable facade and all. And
you have a minute.
Yes, thank you. So then I started mapping out how these spaces actually kind of work through different events that I had mapped, be it the Krishi Sammelan and be it the Ram Navami festival, how each of these part of the building is being used, or what is functional through the months. So yes, that happens to be the main auditorium building, under which there is the living room, and then you have the public gallery, and then the elevated walkway actually takes you through the civic center, and then ultimately culminates in the landscape. And some more model pictures of that. Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Varun, for the presentation. I request Shubham Nagarkar to present his screen.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Shubham. I'm from Pune, and my thesis was Man versus Wild. To start with, the two innocent faces that you see on screen are the last two cheetahs that ever existed in the Indian subcontinent. Almost a century ago, 1 lakh cheetahs were found in almost 44 countries throughout Asia and Africa. As you can see in the map today, only 200 are found in the fragmented areas of Africa, and fewer than 50 in Iran. Further, I've tried to highlight some of the major causes that led to the extinction of cheetah. So why are the cheetahs so important, and why do we need to conserve them? So basically, cheetahs primarily benefit the ecosystem by keeping the animal at hunts at healthy populations. They are shy animals and will always hunt for the weak and the less intelligent, like the hare, antelope, etc. So what basically cheetahs do is they alter the spread of weaker genes to the next generation. This is important to ensure that the population of herbivores do not enlarge to a point where they eat all the grass, ruining the soil and breaking down the entire food chain. So in the year 2000, researchers from Hyderabad had proposed to clone cheetahs, for which they needed a tissue from the Asiatic cheetah from Iran. Iran agreed to do so, but in return, they needed one Asiatic lion, for which India did not agree, and this proposal could not be executed. Since their extinction in India in 1952, plans to re-establish them have been going. So the proposal was to import cheetahs from Namibia in Africa over a period of 5 to 10 years. Finally, on 28 Jan 2020, because of an application filed by National Tiger Conservation Authority, the Supreme Court allowed the central government to introduce South African cheetahs in a suitable habitat in India and is set to sanction over 30 crore for its first phase. After studying a series of news articles, I realized that the cheetahs cannot be imported and directly left into the forest. We need to go through a proper rehabilitation process. Therefore, I'm proposing a rehabilitation and a veterinary center that will facilitate the cheetah reintroduction project in India. Further, I looked into the various stages of wildlife rehabilitation and what all functions go into it. So, what after the cheetah? So basically, the cheetah cannot be conserved in isolation. For achieving the permanent existence, the living organism dependent on the cheetah should also be conserved. So, so the later stage will involve research and rehabilitation of these endangered species for a smooth functioning of the ecosystem. The government of India had shortlisted 5 probable sites on various parameters. They finalized 5 sites in different land parcels: Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, and Uttar Pradesh. Out of this, the Kuno National Park in Madhya Pradesh showed the maximum potential based on capacity to hold cheetah population, prey density, and landscape sizes. The Kuno Palpur Wildlife Sanctuary is located in the Shivpur district of Madhya Pradesh. Some of the key features offered by the forest are as follows. The complete relocation of 24 villages is already done in the core area. Highest prey base as compared to potential sites. A continuous habitat patch of 6,800 kilometers joining the Ranthambore National Park and the Banna Tiger Reserve. Then it is devoid of human settlements due to early relocation programs, and largest population of feral animals left behind by people. While analyzing the site, I realized that its proximity to the core area, less disturbance to the existing habitat, connectivity to the existing road, and sparse vegetation were the strengths of the site. The site also offered opportunities for having bigger enclosures for cheetahs and proximity to the Kuno River. The site is further analyzed based on connectivity, solar and precipitation study, adjacent water body, and vegetation. This helped me to zone the site into buildable and non-buildable zone. The site is further phased into zone 1, 2, and 3. Zone 3 being the enclosures, 2 being the future expansion, and 1 being the proposed rehabilitation center. So I've been following Kevin Richardson since childhood, which has inspired me to care for animals. He sees that even though you throw a blood ball or a blood popsicle here and there as enrichment, but it's no natural life for them. Essentially, they're prisoners for life confined to small spaces for crimes they did not commit. This formed the basis of my design idea. The only thing that the animal will never wish for is the feeling of being captive or trapped. Hence, a permeable structure will always help the animals to heal from the feeling of being trapped. Taking inspiration from the structure of forest, vertical wooden sections are used as a part of the screening instead of using solid walls. This screening will also help in better light and ventilation, as well as the animals will have a connect with the greens outside, making them feel comparatively less trapped. The initial zoning started with the segregation of common functions into sparsely placed building blocks that allowed the landscape to flow through it. The segregated spaces were connected by a common landscape element to ensure better experience while transitioning from one space to another. The landscape spaces played an important role in connecting all the functions whilst enduring seamless flow. The site plan has been developed according to the zoning diagram, where the enclosures are placed in the southern part of the site, identified as a non-buildable zone. The enclosures and the built mass in the north are connected with meandering dirt roads. The rehab center is accessed with the existing dirt road, which passes through the core area of the forest. The built mass is located in the area with sparse density, and the footprint of the building has been kept to minimum to avoid lesser disturbance to the existing ecology. From the meandering pathways, we arrive to the enclosures. The key function of the enclosures is to help cheetah acclimatize and help to monitor its behavior during the rehabilitation process. To provide habitable environment for the cheetahs, different types of rock formations and water bodies are placed according to the lowest contour. The size of the enclosure and the size of the fence is also derived from the anthropology of the cheetahs. The monitoring unit helps in keeping track of the cheetahs' health and well-being in the enclosures. They can be occupied when and where required. This is a section through the enclosure. Upon the entrance, the spaces are arranged according to the hierarchy of their function. The most important being the rehab center, then the veterinary center, and followed by ancillary spaces for the people working in the rehabilitation. The zone 1 has the most important function, the control and the rehab center, whereas the zone 2 has the support system, which has the veterinary and the research center. The veterinary zone is the first response center for injured animals, supported by a quarantine facility for carnivores and herbivores separately. Both zones are connected by a wooden bridge stretched over a water body. This is a view of the interiors of the structure. This section explains how the building sits on site with minimum disturbance to the ecology of the ground. It also shows the connection between the controls and the rehab zone. In this section, I've tried to highlight the semi-open treatment zone, and this is a view of the same. Zone 2 the upper floor consists of a research zone, which consists of biological labs that study different plant and animal species in the forest. Section B and E shows the vertical connection between the different spaces of the veterinary and the research center. In this elevation, I would like to highlight the permeability of the structure and also the stairs with the ramp that take you to the botanical garden. This is a view of the veterinary and the research center. Here, I would like to highlight the relation between the built mass and the canopy of the forest. A particular species cannot be conserved in isolation. For that, animal, plant, and marine ecosystem should be conserved as a whole. The entrance porch captures this essence with the sculpture, the water body, and the plants in the background. The accommodation block consists of stay facility for the people working in the center and has modules of single and double occupancy. A section through the accommodation model shows the relation between interior space and exterior environment amplified by a clear story window. The Charlie Void provides privacy, and the spill-out deck stepping stones under the tree are leisure spaces. This is a section of the accommodation block. This is the view. I've tried to show the structural details using an exploded isometric. Then, so the material palette for the entire structure is being highlighted here. Their use of recycled wood and recycled steel is made with other materials. So once the rehabilitation process is completed, these proposed guidelines will safeguard the existence of cheetah in the forest. So here we come to what are we giving back. So I think it's not always important about giving back to the human community, but it is also about how we add up to the ecological value of a country. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Shubham. The platform is open for comments from the senior panelists, and then we can also take comments from architect Prajal Pradhan.
Should we take from Prajal first, or?
So you can go first.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So again, I think all the three have taken projects which I would have been totally scared to take up in my student days. Very ambitious. One thing that I see, and that I think also gives me a link to the previous projects, but I'll talk about these three first, is that from the 17th century onwards, humankind considered itself to be the lead species, which had the right to do things to other kinds of creatures, other plants, other rocks, everything. Humankind was in charge. And I wonder whether these all three projects, which are trying to make a relation between humans and other species in a different way. In the first two cases with plants mainly, and in the last case with an animal and a series of animals that go with that animal. Are we not considering ourselves too much in charge, that we know that the cheetah has to be brought back? How do we know? Or we know that such and such has to be farmed. How do we know? So the whole question
I think we've lost his network.
Yeah, I think we lost.
Sorry,
Yeah,
are you
he's back.
getting me now? Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it is a kind of reflection of human arrogance, which permeates architectural thinking, that all architecture is to be thought of as something which will solve problems which exist in the world. How about if architecture was done with a more experimental approach? How, for example, could one think of planting a few things in the center of Bangalore, observing what happens, then doing some more, then doing some more, trying to catch the water, trying to do, instead of one big action? That is something which could happen with the cheetah. It could also, the industrialized farming that the first project showed, where it was like a factory for producing vegetables. It was hardly a way in which you could connect an urban dweller with agriculture, or in the old sense, in the sense of being connected to the land, is no longer the case. And that, which means that we have accepted that now there will be no such thing. There will be no such thing as a partnership between humans and other species. And that man will be in charge. And the same thing to the earlier three projects, but we'll talk about that later. So all projects had very, very good ways of doing what they were doing. They were properly researched. I'm sure the plants will grow in the under the water tank. I'm sure the plants will grow in the race course. I am not so sure about the cheetahs and what they will do to the rest of Madhya Pradesh over a period of time. But still, I'm willing to go along with that. And there is an architecture which evolved. Now, my last comment is that the visibility of architecture versus an architecture which privileges other species. How do we create an architecture which speaks softly, which is so quiet, which doesn't call attention to itself to such an extent? And how do we leave the other things to call attention to themselves? This is where I found the projects showed great skill, but inappropriate skill. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, sir.
Shayan, please.
No, sir, I think after you.
No, I think let's rotate. Otherwise, it's
Okay.
It's okay. We can always,
see, I think I'm totally with what Neelkantji said. Very appropriate. I think his advice was fantastic. And I only wish that, there was students of, future students of students who are actually going to do this thesis next year, in the coming years. I wish that they would be here to listen to what is being discussed, because I think what Neelkantji says was very appropriate. Fantastic. Again, it's about, I'm going to harp on the choice of project, which students normally tend to take. When you, I think projects can be very ambitious. And I think the Cheetah project again, I'm actually going to talk about the Cheetah project again, because as he quite rightly said, it's a very ambitious project. But at the end of the day, it's a common thing for all three projects to say that as architects, do we only think of what we should be building? Have we ever given a thought of what we shouldn't be doing, right? When a brief is given, given to us, have we ever tried to rebrief it or debrief it to actually remove a lot of unwantedness? I think man's ego and man's desires are like, even during COVID, we have still not learned. God or nature taught us a lesson, but we're still being greedy, right? So we're also trying to say how we can make this situation, maximize this situation in terms of greed. So as when we do a brief, I think what is important here is that actually, my conversation is a continuation of Chayas's comment. That is to say that how can we correct this? If they are fantastic projects, they are lovely projects to work on. Again, I'm going to harp on something that I told you all before. Do we have a feel of what these projects are? Are we in a position to finish these projects within this couple of months? Because unlike me doing a project for my client, as a student, you all have constraints. That is to say that here the only problem that I would have is whether I satisfy my client or not, or whether my client can afford my project or not. But as a student, I think the challenges are great, because you're bouncing off your ideas with every tutor who would come, who's going to come and sit in front of you. You're going to bounce it off with even your seniors, the one who, you're getting them to help. That guy would have a lot to say about. So it's getting bounced off of so many people. So I think we do have a problem with time. So I think we have to be very, very careful with the kind of projects that we actually choose. Then trying to see whether taking Chayas's ideas further or his advice further, how do we do this? I think it's about the brief. It's about the brief and how we are interpreting our ideas. That is to say that are we to build everything that is there in the brief, right? So the ideal situation would be to say that this is what the client wants, this is what the need is, but we question to say whether it's a correct thing to do or not. Are we trying to, can we take a lot of unwantedness out of the whole thing? And do we only do what is essentially needed? So, and also about the life cycle of the cross. Are we, I think, see, I think when I was looking at Irushi's project, is that we live in the same country, but I did not see her. I thought it was very interesting to think of something which is very negative. I think the whole thought process was nice. Sorry, I'm going back to the earlier, but I do have a point to make. That is to say that now after I listened to Neelkanth, I think I'm just wondering, and also Sandeep Ji, I'm actually wondering whether the tower was the solution, or whether it was the inverse of a tower was the solution. You know what I mean, Hiroshi? So see, there is no one answer to the question. You have to bounce it off with few people to see whether we want to build too much, or whether we want to build what is needed. Because the greed and also the wants are so much in today's context. It's only growing. Even COVID hasn't helped. So I think personally, I feel that here I would only want to look at the brief, the client's brief, or the brief that you all formulate for you all to do the project. And then when you start designing, whether you have to have a questioning process, whether we need those, all those that is given in a project. So, and also about the choice of material, because already I've seen a lot of Pompeido center looking projects, which are quite ambitious itself. I mean, of course they are lovely, they're very they're very happy projects, but to question whether there was another way of doing things, right? So it's about a questioning process before we finalize the design and you finalize the materials and so on. So it's a general comment, and also the constraints or the challenges of taking a project which has which is kind of very ambitious. I don't know if I made any sense out of what I said. Sandeep ji, how about you?
I think we don't have time. I think we'll go to the next one because I think we have, I think, is that Bhumika? I think I don't.
Yeah, I think we can take architect Prajal Pradhan's comment,
Yeah.
and then we'll continue this discussion at the end of session 3. I hope you don't mind.
No,
Yeah,
no, not at all, because it's
Yeah.
important that everybody, gets a turn.
Yeah, please, architect Prajal
I
Pradhan.
think most of the things are already covered, and I agree with Nilkant sir that because I also believe that architects should always put an effort to solve problems, and all of the 3 presenters, they have like thought through it. I'm really glad to actually have observed this, and I'm actually really in awe to actually observe the solutions that they have proposed. For example, Bhaiba's water tank, right? So we also have similar type of water tanks here in Nepal. So which is completely an eyesore. And now I know what to do with those water tanks in my neighborhood. So that was a fantastic solution to, to the existing modern world problem that we in our neighborhood have, right? And Barun's and Subham's both, I think 3 things they have concentrated on: concept, research, and presentation. I think for an architect, I think these 3, just not the design, but these 3 things together makes anybody a good architect. And all the 3 present have really excelled in these 3 categories, which I believe. So rather than commenting, I would really like to interact with these presenters at the end of the session, and most of the comments have already been covered. So I'm really here watching you guys and learning myself, and I'm really in awe to have been participating. I'm really in awe that I'm here sitting, observing you guys and learning through it also. So yeah, that'll be it. That was fabulous.
Thank you, Prajal sir. I would like to thank all the presenters of session 2. Now, proceeding, the participants for session 3 are Abhishek Raj, India. Abhishek Raj is currently working as an architect in Stomp Architects, Madurai, India. He completed Bachelor of Architecture from Care School of Architecture, Trichy, India, and was recently awarded for one of the best 3 thesis projects at National Award in Excellence in Architectural Thesis 2020. Kavindu, Sri Lanka. Kavindu Desharam is from Sri Lanka. He completed his master's degree in architecture at the University of Liverpool, Riyadh, Bangladesh. He is a recent graduate from BRAC University, Bangladesh. His goal regarding architecture is to continually expand his design skills and knowledge through professional practice. Therefore, he is keen on gaining more proficiency through experience and is a firm believer in hard work and dedication. The 4th participant is Pujan Gajril from Nepal. Pujan completed his Bachelor of Architectural Engineering from the Thapatali Engineering Campus, Kathmandu. He volunteered to build earthbag houses for victims of earthquake in 2015 and worked as a General Secretary at Architecture Students Innovative Society, ACES, at Thapatali Engineering Campus, and is currently working as a freelancer. His inspiration lies in ancient civilizations, their architecture and engineering marvels around the world. The young panelist joining for this session is architect Solati Ramanathan. She is the founder and principal architect at Urban Workshop. She has a bachelor's degree in architecture from the School of Architecture and Planning, Chennai, and a master's degree in housing and urbanism from the Architectural Association in London. She has worked at Matthew and Ghosh Architects in Bangalore and Vikram Padke in Chennai. The Design United platform is again open for presentation. Over to you, Abhishek.
Thank you all. I'll start my presentation. Is the screen is visible?
Yes, it is visible.
Yeah. So good afternoon. So my thesis topic is the conception of station as a public space. So in Indian Railways, stations forms with the 5 keywords like drivers of urban development, build form of identity, permanent architecture manifestation, central position, and image of a city. But these keywords on today's condition on railway stations are major presence. So I started my thesis with the 3 keywords like station is no longer just a place to book tickets, a deboarder train is a place where user must experience. A railway station is a public space. Does it really act as a public space? So my thesis is creating a station which combining how can combine public space and the experience into a station. So my project approach through osmosis. And osmosis is an movement of molecules from higher concentration to lower concentration to semi-permeable membrane. Yeah. So I've related with the architecture. Like architecture plays a semi-permeable membrane which attracts the people to move from higher concentration to lower concentration. So I started my thesis with the detailed study of timeline of railway station from Indian railway station and the data of Indian railway station and divisions of Indian railway stations and how the stations are formed. Then breaking down the study into further. So I've concentrated on the 5 stations of southern India like Central, Chennai Central, Tiruchirappalli, Madurai, and Coimbatore, Palakkad, and Trivandrum. These are the major stations in southern zone. So I've created a parameter to study stations. So like stations, Madurai, Tiruchirappalli, Salem, and Bangalore cantonment. So I've listed like size, traffic count, linkage, layout station, elements of station, entrance, exit, primary station, platform, secondary platform, tertiary platform, and a connecting corridor, and type of users. Station with a physical fabric relation, amenity placements, positive, negative spaces, edge conditions, and the inference. With these inferences have taken how the station to be placed on the context and which are amenities to be related to the context. Breaking further, have decided to study type of users play in the station, like tourists, office goers, onward destinated, thoroughfare, hawkers. The users play where they are playing and how they are playing are the major important in the station. Like huge amount of people, inflow and outflow of people, and they spend time in stations. Like tourists plays a major role in entrance, waiting area, and exit space. And their inference like what they need and what they want to do on the waiting area and their spacing. I have listed with the spatial needs. Like other users like railway working staff, auto drivers, car drivers, vendors, commercial shopkeepers, security force. Like vendors major role in the edge of a stations. So on coming to the context, I've decided to take a context as a Madurai, Tamil Nadu, India, which is the oldest settlement along the Vaigai River. The settlements are formed by the concentric circle over the oldest temple of Meenakshi Amman temple. A station which is 1 kilometer away from the temple. So it is close nearly to a mixed commercial space. So this is the Google image of a site, which is a Meenakshi Amman temple. This is concentric circle, which is a mixed commercial zone. So the station which divides the city into 2. So this is a new city, this is a old city. So H forms a major complex on the context. So illustration says that the station which divides the city into 2, like old city and new city, there's only one pedestrian pathway. Users takes the station footover bridge as a pedestrian to cross the old city and new city. So it's a layout of station. There's only two bridges, which is a Vaikla bridge, Medra Coach bridge, and the Periyar bridge, which connects the both sides of the city. So users take the footover bridge as a pedestrian one. So it's 28 acres of land. It is an old structure which is 100 years old of station. Then there are 18 years of railway dockyard. So have planned to take how can station combine with the railway station with the public space and the user must experience. Due to the context of existing railway lines, there is a critical of railway angles, slopes, have to decided to take a public space as a upper level. So on existing platform says like entry, unpaid area it acts as an ticket counter or the waiting hall, then the platform. So all the amenities placed at the edge of a platform. So platform to platform, there will be a bridge or overbridge or under bridge. Then the unpaid area on other side of a city. Then I have to recreate or reconstruct the station into how people of separated people of inflow and outflow of people. I've created like entry arrival concourse. We have the administration clock room ticketing counter. Then they move up to the departure concourse, which is 6 meters away above from the platform level, which is filled with the amenities like
Yeah, 5
restaurant,
minutes.
library. Yeah, okay. Lounge, retail shops, ticket counters, and movement controls. These are the amenities placed at the departure concourse level. So if a train comes, people move from the departure concourse level to the platform level. So if people from the train, they move down to the sub-pedestrian pathway and moves out of station. So this is a context development, like these are the existing stations with the 2 foot bridges. So people, non-traveler takes the station foot bridges to cross both sides of the city. So I've decided to create a sub-pedestrian pathway which acts as a common platform which passes, takes up people from the one side to other side. So amenities placed at the edge of a platform on an existing context. I've decided to take us up all the amenities at the platform, both the railway station, which is common platform of waiting halls, restaurants, library, and other stuff. On above of the larger scale of roof, I've decided to take up a public space. So this is how it works. Like entry concourse, down it will be a pedestrian pathway, and the departure concourse on the above level, and above will be a flexible public space. So this is the sub-pedestrian pathway. These are the departure concourse level or platform level or departure concourse level, then public space. So here it comes, like this is a sub-pedestrian pathway, 30-meter wide sub-pedestrian pathway. So these are the sub-pedestrian pathway which pulls the people down from the platform through a ramp or the lift or accelerator, then pulls out of a stations. There will be 3 sub-pedestrian pathways. These are the existing structure with this underlayer pool. These are the entry concourse. On above 6-meter level, there will be a common amenities platform. It's called as a departure concourse level. It divided into different parts like semi-public area, semi-public area, and public area. So public area denotes like people, non-traveler people can enter into a departure concourse, enhance the restaurant, library, and other stuff which relates with the non-travelers to a travelers. There will be a security or scanning system like changing over the public to semi-public. So orange indicates like a public space or a green space or the view deck of which connects both sides of city and the station. It's a roof of a station which is a long roof of unwanted use on today's condition. Have decided to take as a public space on Indian context, like it actually roll over the dynamic one, not a static one. So morning it will be like a market, after it changes as a food hub or the food market, or it changes things. So I've decided to take a ramp from the sub-pedestrian pathway, which flows over the roof of a station and takes exit at the existing bridge. So facade of a station actually acts as a porous treatment. So there'll be like no cover of stations. So it'll be like visible of city into a station. So this like overall view, old city and new city will be connecting bridge with a 30-meter wide. There'll be a stage. This is a departure concourse level. It's a ramp to a public space. There'll be a 30-meter grid. Will be explained in later slides. There will be a pathway which acts as an pathway for the riders or joggers or something. Then will be a pedestrian pathway. This is the existing bridge, vehicular bridge. So ramp connects to the vehicular bridge. So master plan of view is a road which acts as this as like a bus stop. People from the train, they takes the bus stop and moves to other mode of transportation. These are parkings. So plan, I'll move further. So on concentrating the users play in the station, like yellow indicates the office goer. Office goers mostly dependent on the time. They don't involve in the ticketing or the other stuff. They directly move to the platform, takes the train, and they exit on the other stations. So dotted line represents that people to board the train, and straight line represents the people to deboard the train. It's a sub-pedestrian pathway. Every platforms are connected with the sub-pedestrian pathway to move the people from the outside of a station to outside of the station.
You have 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll move on the slides. So I'll say like public ramp, then line of control, public space. Line of control in sense a semi-public space which acts as a waiting area of the station. So that's like 3 meter grid. So these spaces of 3 meter grids will be like flexible public space. It can be like a seating area. It changes into an park or the exhibition center or the expo center or the or food market, food retail. These are the retail flexible options that will generate an income to the station, and also allows the people of non-travelers to travelers to interact with the space and on their own context. This is sections. So these are the sub-pedestrian pathways, a platform level, this is a departure concourse level, it's a ramp which connects to the public space to the departure concourse level, it's over a roof of a public ramp, then some canvas section, like this is a platform level, this is a departure concourse level, and it's a public space on the above platform level. Will be interacting of non-travelers to the travelers.
Your time is up.
Yeah, I'll move on the slides.
Yeah, sure.
And thank you.
Thank you, Abhishek. Next, we have Riyadh from Bangladesh.
Hello everyone. Assalamualaikum. You can hear, right?
Yeah, you're audible.
Hello, Assalamualaikum. Hi, this is Riyadh from Bangladesh. I have completed my thesis last semester from BRAC University. Today I'm going to talk about my thesis project, which is 1971 Genocide Torture Archive and Museum. Firstly, I want to start off by giving a small brief what genocide is and the unpleasant stories that occurred during the genocide in 1971. Genocide means the deliberate killing of a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim of destroying that nation or the group. The year 1971 is known as our independence year, and the majority of the people tend to celebrate only the glorious victory which was achieved back then. However, behind this, the sheer happiness lies a lot of pain, torture, agony, and that has led to this victory. There are numerous torture incidents that people had to face during this war. These are some examples. Some of them include getting their heads slaughtered off through rice harvesting machines, getting burned alive inside a heating boilers, then being forced to lay down on beds of sharp nails and being worked upon, and so on. Some of them even kept hostages for uncountable days without any food, and even if provided, they were given a very small portion as a reason they ended up dying for starvation. So according to Guinness Book of Records, Bangladesh genocide is one of the top 5 genocides in 20th century. From this overview, we can see that during that period, around 3 million Bangladeshi people were killed brutally. Out of 3 million people, 2 to 4 lakhs women were raped, and on an average, 6 to 12,000 people were killed each day. Last but not the least, amongst the genocide of human history, only Bangladesh, in Bangladesh, the highest number of people were killed in a lower span of time. So moving on, my purpose of this project is based solely to honor the martyrs who have given their lives fighting during this war, as well as to develop a rich genocide archive. Moreover, this museum would make the next generation realize that freedom is not just a 7-letter word, it is more beyond that. Now, I am going to talk a bit about my site. It is situated in Munshipara, Khulna Division, Bangladesh. Khulna felt like an appropriate site according to me because, as you can see, a total number of 1,182 mass graves, mass killing spots, and torture cells have been spotted in Khulna. Within a day, nearly 10,000 people were killed in Chuknagar, Khulna. Here I have spotted some major mass grave killing spots and torture cells of Khulna city. Then I try to understand the site surroundings, climate, topography, and activities of Khulna city, so that I can design this whole complex contextually. And the total area of my site was 74,468 square feet, and my proposed built area is 7,770 square feet. So these are my site sections. Now coming up to my concept, as I have mentioned earlier, we tend to celebrate our victories so much that we have forgotten the sufferings and bloodshed lying underneath, which I have found very relatable with iceberg theory. So the concept for this project has come up from the iceberg theory, as the victory is only visible as the tip. However, the pain, soreness, agony, which are the strong base holding the tip, remains invisible and invisible below. As I progressed towards the design phase, I initially tried connecting the mass grave spots, killing spots, torture sets, as I have shown earlier, into a pattern which derived the form of the museum. Consecutively, I developed the schematic plan and section, and simultaneously tried to achieve the desired spaces of the museum through the sketches. As this museum is not so materialistic to me, I tried to gather and portray the incidents of the war through different phases and different spaces, so as to give the visitors an experiential journey as they walk through this museum. So I try to generate some programs here, like residence archive display and studio galleries, local community space, debate spaces, urban living, urban facilities, meeting spaces, program facilities, etc. So coming
You
to
have
my
5 minutes.
ground floor plan. Yes, thank you. Ground floor plan. This is my you can see the cursor, right? Hello.
Yes,
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 it's
the
visible.
cursor is
Yes, we
visible.
can.
Right. Coming to my ground floor plan, this is my pedestrian entry, and this is my vehicular entry. Both of them are meeting in a common platform which is pre 1971 gallery, and it actually goes down -7 feet. Since during that period people didn't expect a brutal war like this, therefore they began to fight unarmed and with fear, but eventually they overcame their fear and fought with bravery, which brought us the victory. On that note, I tried to design this museum in such a manner that the entry to the museum would be narrow and unwelcoming, as you can see here. And on the other hand, the exit would open out towards a ground plaza, which indicates our victory, which is this one. So from the pre 1971 gallery, they will progress towards gallery number 1. Sorry. From here, pre 1971 gallery, they will progress towards gallery number 1, which is this, and through this ramp, they will move down to gallery number 2, which is at -17 feet. This is the gallery number 2. From here, if they turn left, they will find the workshop block, and if they find right, through this time they will go down again at -27 feet and find the gallery number 3. Here, the gallery number 3. So from the gallery number 3, if they turn left again, they will find the research block, and if they come to this side, this right side, the phone number here, they will come to gallery number 4 here, uh, through this path, and here they will enjoy the experience of the gallery number 4. From gallery 4, they will go through the intermediary gallery space to gallery 4 to gallery 5. The 7 number here. The 7 number here. And from gallery number 5, they will take another ramp here to go back to minus 17 feet. And that is gallery number 5, which is this. From gallery number 5 to gallery number gallery number 6, gallery number 6 to gallery number 7, they will find some studio galleries, which is located here. And from gallery number 7, which is this, gallery number 7, visitors will move down to minus 27 feet through this transparent ramp, and will find the gallery number 8.
You have a minute.
Below the gallery number 9. So from gallery number 8, they will take this ramp and come again, move to minus 17 feet, and that is gallery number 9. And finally, through this circular ramp, they will end their journey towards the victory through a grand plaza. So this portion of the museum, this black portion, is submerged underwater, consisting of exhibits as well. So now you can see the sections here. And here the levels. Here the sections. This is the transparent ramp, so that everyone can enjoy and experience the water exhibits here. And
your time is up.
Yes, last minute, please. Moving the slides. These are the studio galleries, and there are some interior spaces. This is the transparent ramp, outer exhibition hall, exit, temporary the main plaza. This is the temporary exhibition plaza. This is the overall view. I tried to keep all the trees that existed in that location. Thank you.
Thank you, Riyadh. That was a wonderful presentation. That was one graphical presentation, not thesis, pun intended. Now moving forward, we have Poojan Gojril from Nepal.
Is my screen visible to all?
Yes,
yes, it is.
Okay, with this first slide as my introduction and introduction of the topic, let us move directly into the meaning of the project. So when we see these pictures, in this first picture, in the first glance, we find that it is the picture of a face. But if we see deeply, then we find that the story is something different. A person is riding on a horse, and the face was just an illusion. Similarly, if we see this second picture, there also we find at first glance that it is a head of a person. But if we see deeply, then we find that it is just permutations of tissues, organs, muscles, and bones. So the one who realized this at first, the realization is both. Okay, and the method we applied to get that is Vipassana. Vipassana generally means to look deeply. V means special or deep, and Passana means to look. So Vipassana is done to understand the nature of things as they are. So let us now know what mandala is. Mandala generally in 2D means circle or disc, and in 3D it's a sphere. That can also be understood from the second picture, from these elements like Vayu Mandal, Jal Mandal, or Apa Mandal, Bhu Mandal, etc. So it generally means the cognition of the roundness of the space or field. It generally represents our entire universe. So this project has come to fill the lacks in the present Vipassana centers, present Vipassana centers that I visited generally are lacking in reflecting the teachings of the Buddha. They are lacking in giving this ambience of this ancient connectedness to the users, and they also do not use natural element as meditative elements or practicing meditations. So in this project, I'll be trying to fill all of the lacks that are present in present Vipassana centers, so that the users will be using this space and that will help them out to solve their mental problems. And finally, this project also presents opportunity for developing the structures for tourism in future, and that tourism would be to gain insight. Therefore, I have named it Insight Tourism. Literature study and case studies were crucial step beforehand of designing the project. Well, there were very few architectural literatures that was exactly matching to the project. I just studied few; those are very close. And I also studied the Buddhist scriptures like Mahasatipatthana Sutra and tried to extract out the idea of spaces needed for the Vipassana recommended by Buddha himself. And these spaces are either forest or foot of a tree or abandoned temples or houses or caves. So we'll be trying to recreate few to all of these spaces in this project. And literature study as a backbone, I had case studied on spaces that were used in the time of the Buddha, and I just studied it chronologically and saw many changes and differences. So this first picture with this brick structure is the Gandhakuti of Jetavan Vihara, followed by Ajanta Caves, Nalanda University, Sompura Mahavihara, and this Chandi Borobudur, and the present Vipassana Center in Nepal, and also internationally present Vipassana centers. So I did it in terms of scale to see how grandiose it used to be, and I had few contemporary I had some comparisons to contemporary center size. I did it in terms of locations. I did it in terms of user types and numbers and plan forms, and basically try to study what used to be the plan of the spaces for Vipassana meditations. And obviously, spatial relationship was one of the most important, where I studied the nature of the spaces, their topographical relationship, the spaces they are enclosing, their alignment to the cardinal directions, connections through the corridors, and these spill out areas in the middle enclosed by the small cellas for the meditation. So that would be more helpful for designing the spaces. I did it in terms of materials, so that can be clear from the pictures. And also I studied some of the reliefs from these gates of the Sanchi Stupa, where I can get this very idea about the spaces that were used in the time of the Buddha. I just studied that the structures were load bearing, thatched roofs, mud buildings. Also, there used to be the wood and woods post and lintel structure. But comparing to the present, there are just RCC structures, steel structures. Maybe it's due to the economic considerations and so on. And nowadays, especially these viharas are built as framed structures. Obviously, another factor was the natural light, and those were taken from courtyard spaces in ancient times, and still that is in practice. However, they also take it from clear story windows and vaults. So another step in the process of formulating the program here, what I did, I just specified the programs, I just categorized the users, and with the approximation of the numbers of the users, I began to just calculate the minimum area and the minimum number of rooms. And if the more of those spaces were required, then I just added or multiplied to that number. And in this step, okay, and in this step, even the development areas were taken into consideration, and the calculation of ground coverage was done. So the next step was anthropometrics and these design standards. Buddha recommended 4 postures for meditation of Vipassana. That's standing, sitting, walking, and laying down. So measuring spaces for these 4 postures and taking this as a unit spaces requirement for creating the spaces, then I began the process. And obviously it was followed by this studying of the design standards for wheelchair users, for office areas, parking, and so on. So the next very important step was site analysis. The site I chose is Lumbini, which is quite known to many people. It is also one of the World Heritage Sites of Nepal, and I chose the northernmost part of this whole Grand Master Plan done by Japanese architect Kenzo Tange. And I studied whatever possible studies I did whatever was necessary, and that would help in my design. For example, geology of site, hydrology, water table, soil conditions, and approach roads and sites and surrounding, which was basically the locality was basically semi-rural, and they have this agrarian lifestyle. So even that would help during the collection of materials for building of the structures. And I also studied about these nearby monuments and this bird conservation sanctuary there, which should not be touched by the design. And studying the climatic conditions and even having the SWOT analysis, the most important step was studying the approach of the Tange. He created these axes and he used these circles and squares as a design element, and with varying in their shapes by using the repetition as a design principle, that the design seemed to have been progressed. So studying all of these sites and gathering the enough information for myself, I began developing the concept. In the first picture, I just keep all those site informations, and the figure below, I just carried on this traditional approach of creating axes. Then I put the mandala shape in its intersection as a design element, and applying again the repetition as a design principle. I just created concentric circles that would be the basis for the main theme. And the main theme for this whole site development was from the literature study that is known as 31 planes of existence. It is a explanation of our existence by Buddha, which ascends from this lower plane known as hell plane and to the uppermost plane, that is the formless Brahma plane, and intermediate plane contents of the human world, animal world, and so on. So this meditation space will be basically designed in the human plane, and not every plane will be designed. Only these middle circular sections would be designed in this thesis, and that is the project limitations. And that space was taken, bubble diagrams were created, and also the zonings were created. And this figures here shows 4 zones. Okay, 4 zones. Zone 1 consists of the empty space, and the space that consists the landforms which resembles our earth spheres. And the zone 2 consists of the cave spaces. Zone 3 consists of vihara spaces, and zone 4 consists of the space where we have these dead bodies and plastinated bodies, human corpse displayed for the purpose of realization of human life. And the next step was form development. Every step is the same as explained before. And this yellow background picture is what the final form was obtained. Now, this is the site plan where this whole site is shown, and only the middle portion has been developed. Other are just the connection to that middle portions. And this northwest portion of the site is the provision for the water supply, which is done by creating these reservoirs, and the water is supplied through the water wheel technologies that used to be used in ancient times. And the site is connected to this southern old Peace Pagoda by the pathway. And east of it is this bird crane sanctuary, which is untouched by the design, where offset wall and platforms have been given so that viewer can go there and just view the bird without disturbing them. Down is the profile section of the site, and this is probably the conceptual master plan. And these pictures here shows the zone 4, where these corpses and all of these human mounds will be kept for the meditation purpose only. And the picture, this upper right corner of the screen, is the space for the meditation for
Your time is up.
one-day visitors. Okay, I'll just move forward a little bit. And this is the typical plan that consists of the meditation cells and the courtyard spaces. And these small tiny figures in a semicircular fashion are monks and users listening to the Dhamma. So that is basically spaces for Dhamma discourses. These are the spaces for meditation for visitors. And these are the spaces for those dead body displays and mounds. And this is the sections where we can get idea of materials, building typologies, and construction. And these are the 3D figures that shows you the types of spaces, cave spaces, spaces of viharas, aerial views, and also it gives the material idea that would be used during the constructions. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Poojan. Lastly, we have Kavindu from Sri Lanka.
Poojan, you can stop sharing the screen.
Sorry, I just, yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Kavindu, and I'd just like to point out, so my thesis, it was a group thesis, so it was me and two other guys. The title of our project is called Machine of Change, where we've been investigating in how we can use architectural language to counteract societal fractures caused by disinformation and a lacking confidence in our current social infrastructure. The aim of the building is to support interaction, debate, and discussion of relevant topics, and to provide platforms for grassroots societal movements. We started off by watching the documentary The Great Hack. So it was basically focusing on how the scandal between Facebook and the Cambridge Analytica, how they used people's private data through Facebook and then formed digital campaigns which skewed the US elections as well as the Brexit campaign in the UK. So in terms of looking for a site, we decided to focus on Manchester, just because so it's considered the second city of England after London, but it still had one of the lowest voter turnouts. So therefore we decided to focus on Manchester, and we decided to focus on central Manchester. So as you can see, there's an aerial of the site. It's over here, straight opposite the Manchester's main railway station, which is the Piccadilly station. Some of the key features of the site are you have a viaduct here, so carrying the trains, and you have an existing sort of like a public park called Vimta Park over here. This is just some of the site analysis. As you can, so yeah, this is the Vimta Park over here, and then you've got the sort of here, you can see the viaduct. During the design process, we've considered the quality of relevant internal spaces. So we looked at the Scottish Parliament, and this is just a model of one of their like contemplation spaces. This is a model of the Welsh Assembly, and then we montage them together to create different atmospheres, to create different spaces. Media in all its forms have helped influence and inform democracy throughout history. Manchester's had a prominent presence in the print work industry, and through our research, we found intriguing forms created by the industrial process of the printing press. In a similar fashion to that of a printing press, we began experimenting to see how we could create architectural forms as an homage to the industry. So here we, as I said, similar to that of a printing press, we began to experiment in different forms, which eventually we were able to form this shape. So we created this weaving ribbon, which had a better connection to its surroundings, namely the viaduct over here and the Vimta Park. The process begins with a notion, a course, or an idea. This needs to be researched, refined, organized, debated, and broadcast to build a support base. A petition then can be formed, and in conjunction with the public pressure, the process of a bill passing, the government gears up triggered. So this is just a sketch model that we did showing, so that it walks through the narrative of our building. Yeah, in terms of the external form and space, so this is just a diagram showing how the overall scheme developed. So initially we had the building here, so that within the site, and then we split it up using, we followed the building lines. So we followed the road lines, the existing corridor movements, and then we played with the height levels, again, sticking to like the relevant heights to the surrounding buildings. It was also important for us to go beyond the site, so coming onto this side of the viaduct as well, because we felt that this side was not as used to its potential. So we wanted to sort of create an entrance in this side of the viaduct as well. And obviously, it being a sort of a public assembly sort of building, outdoor spaces were important as well for petitions. And and everything else at the end is tied again by this, again, the ribbon that we created. So it just ties everything together. These are just some of the developing models. So here, you can see we were looking at the outdoor sort of key spaces. This is sort of meant to be a debate tower. This is the main sort of building where most of the debate and stuff takes place. You can see the viaduct, and then we're sort of trying to create an entrance space over here as well for the viaduct. This is just a 1:500 3D model and a CNC building. Here's a site plan for the whole scheme at an upper ground level, showing the 4 buildings where all the key functions of the design will take place. Thank you. So over here we have the sort of one of the main buildings, but this is I'll show you in the next slide. It's subterranean, so it's underground. It's a resource center. It's essentially sort of functions as a library. It's as I said, a resource center, so people can research and refine their core ideas. And then you have the main public and the tower building. So on the tower buildings on the lower ground, you have the tower, and then above it, you'll have offices and residential spaces. The third sort of important building is the design suite. So here there are spaces for people to create banners and form digital marketing campaigns. And finally, over here, you have the called the forum. It's where you can address people. So there's a lecture theatre there, and also you can stand outside and address the people outside of Vimta Park for larger crowds. So this staggered section shows how the form of our proposal operates at multiple levels and at both sides of the viaduct over here. As investigative research often implies diving below the surface of an issue and to understand the underlying factors, we felt that the structure being subterranean is a symbolic reference to this process. Additionally, Manchester is a very layered city, and having structure working at multiple levels is in keeping with the nature of the city. Yeah, in terms of the debate space, so we looked at like the development, the evolving of the debating spaces over time. And we decided to stick to an opposing benches parliament. So it's similar to the current British Parliament. And as I said, transparency was a key thing in our program. So transparency to the people. So therefore we had the internal streets going through the either sides of the debating tower, so people were able to actually see the debating and discussions taking place. We didn't want to hide anything really from the people. So this is a section going through the tower where the lower ground floor hosts the debating chamber, with the upper floors hosting collaborative workspaces, and the highest floors accommodating for those people coming into the city. So when people are coming for conferences and stuff, there's accommodation for them. These are just some of the typical plans of some of the spaces over here. So this render shows, it's sort of like a day and night sort of render, and it highlights, so you've got the viaduct here and the debating tower here. So during the day, the speaker can address a crowd to the space there, and also it signifies the importance of the viaduct. It's not just, it obviously carries trains and stuff to Piccadilly Station, but it also protects people from the rain. And within the under some of the arches, we've incorporated gallery spaces. So this is the design suite. As I said, it forms the digital campaigns and stuff. And outside, you can see here from this render that people addressing large crowds at Vimta Park. This render is taken from the perspective of trains arriving into the city. So it sort of signifies three things: the importance of our building, the ribbon serving as a framing device, firstly looping over the viaduct, and also framing Piccadilly Station. This is just a model, 1:200 model, final model. It was 3D printed CNC and hand modeled. And so this is my final slide. So this, we thought Manchester doesn't have a one significant building. If you say if people are trying to say what's like a big building in Manchester, there's not really one. And we thought of creating like a postcard image. And we thought that our building would create that postcard image, so it signifies the importance of Manchester. And as you can see, yeah, the ribbon goes over the viaduct and sort of ties everything together. Thank you for listening. That's my presentation.
Thank you, Kavindu. We would like to wrap up the presentation segment with comments from Architect Salashi, and will eventually move towards the common session of discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all the students for presenting your thesis work. It's really an amazing effort, and you know, just kind of see your starting point, the process. And I think what was really interesting is to also see the diverse architecture that emerged from your various inquiries. So while I kind of observe and react to the various thesis projects, I think Professor Chaya has seeded a thought in my mind, you know, as to what really our role is as architects, and to really question the I and the me in the architecture that we produce. So I'll just sort of briefly, you know, share my thoughts on your work. So Abhishek, you know, you asked, you raised a lot of very important, you know, questions, and you've sort of analyzed the design challenges, you know, associated with the railway stations in cities. And I think the key question that you were asking is, one was that, you know, the station was built on a very important parcel of land, a very large parcel of land. And it was public in nature, but was it really functioning well as a public space? And I think the second question was, how can the station, you know, function as a hub of social, economic, you know, and cultural activity, in addition to being just a transport interchange? So in a sense, I think one thing was you're looking at a, you know, mixed-use building as a typology. So I think where you looked at kind of circulation, structure, and you know, the use cases. I think what I would have also liked to have seen is, if you know, I understand it's a single person thesis, but just to give some thought to you know, the station not just being as a independent building, but looking at a station district. So you sort of covered it a little bit, where you said, you know, around the station you had economic activity, so it kind of spills into the neighborhood. And so what are these factors that allow for better integration of the station with the you know, the surrounding environment? So maybe it could be the mobility, you know, the study, building typologies, the legibility of the fabric. So that's my sort of feedback on your thesis. Riyadh, again, you know, very, I think a very emotional and personal, you know, thesis topic, and you know, you sort of handled it with a lot of sensitivity. And it was nice that you designed the building as a kind of series of sections, where the focus was really on the user experience, and that perhaps lent kind of a legibility to the you know, to the movement inside the museum. I think what you could have also looked at was, you know, a museum again is an important building in the neighborhood, and in your case probably even larger. So, you know, looked at how this kind of the site conditions, the site challenges, you know, added that layer, you know, to your sort of design and thought process. And Poojan, you know, it was a very interesting topic, and I think the structure that you also kind of, after analyzing different scales of structure, was very impressive. You know, if you didn't tell me, I think I would have thought it was like a Game of Thrones set or something like that. It was really, it was really impressive, and I can imagine kind of having a monk life in there, because you're just sort of lost in space. But I think what would have been interesting is if you could have, or at least what I would have done is to sort of question the architecture a little bit more. And, I saw a lot of references to vernacular architecture, and I think it would have been nice to see a contemporary take on this space. Kavindu, again, very, very interesting work. There were many layers to your, your design and process. I think when I first saw the bird's eye view of the, the form generation, and then I kind of saw the section. I was actually happy to see the section because a lot of the time, the form generation exercise, you could get carried away with that, and then I think you kind of dealt with both the scales really well. And it's a it's a form of architecture that I personally haven't really had any experience with, but I find it very interesting where you kind of, you let go of the design to the process. So you've sort of created a process of creating the form, and then it just kind of emerges from that. And I think that itself is you could definitely take forward and explore further. Like there's so many artists who've done this in abstract expressionism, where they just figure out a process and then they keep experimenting within those boundaries. But overall, yeah, great work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Architect Sulachi. Now we'll be moving on to a little more relaxed and common discussion and common feedback session. For the session, Architect Chandra Bhanu from India. She's an architect and currently staying in Bangalore. Apart from her interest in architecture, she's also interested in understanding design process and design thinking in general. She loves making things. Whenever she finds time, she keeps experimenting or making something or the other. She loves the violin and is currently learning to play the violin. And architect Madhuri Sharma from India. She's a young architect who graduated from RV College of Architecture, Bangalore. Her interest lies in the intersections of architecture and earth, the sensitivity towards it, and sensitivity to the people who are part of it. The quest took her to Hunarshala in Kutch and now to DU Studio in Auroville, where she is now exploring various aspects of contextual and sensitive design. We welcome you both to join our common conversation panel, and I think it was very interesting how each of the presenters had different perspectives, and there are certain questions that keep arising in students' mind, especially who are not yet into the thesis semester, and they're still in the phase of understanding what topic to choose. When there is varied ideas and interest, I want to ask the panelists and presenters like how one could actually come down and boil down to one topic, because it is very distracting when there are so many options kept in front of you.
So I think I can start. I don't think it's ever simple, but the process of picking a topic itself is very interesting because there's so many things to just filter from, and you can never get into it fully unless you're in it. But I think one must look for a topic where there is more scope to explore. I picked a topic based on how much I don't know about it, or how much it's you should be able to reach somewhere at the end of your thesis based on what you don't know. I think that would be a way to pick a topic, although it might sound confusing.
Thank you so much, Madhuri. Yeah.
Yeah, just adding to what Madhuri just said, in terms of choosing the topic, perhaps rather than calling it a topic, you're actually choosing a design challenge that you want to experiment and explore through the thesis. So narrowing it down to what kind of challenge you want to address in terms of the typologies or in terms of a certain standpoint or in terms of certain responses, that will make it easier rather than saying that, hey, I want to design an institute for so and so or whatever.
And I think because there's a theoretical premise to the entire project, there's a certain optimism and it gives us more area to explore new questions and new ideas. So I think it's a great opportunity to pick questions and just see where it goes. One doesn't like, you don't have to stick to a standpoint from where you started. You can let the process probably, hopefully, change your perspective too along the way.
Yeah, like usually, I think the idea of selecting a topic is by itself a process of design, I feel, because we go through so many like so many readings and so many understandings to sensitively boil down to a topic. And yeah, and then actually after seeing so many presentations from people from different regional aspects, I think the region and the background they come from also influences the topic we pick to a large extent, because we have certain emotional attachment and certain experience that we would have picked up over a period of time. Do you all have any comments regarding how for somebody who is still just getting into the semester of thesis to things we need to look out for?
Yeah, I mean, actually, after looking at all the student presentations, I had written a few suggestions down. So these are not targeting any one particular project, but these are observations and taking from the good points and also like the points that one should remember or keep in mind or look out for. So the first one is like, like I was saying, always have a focus to your thesis and try to evolve your design process according to that larger question. Otherwise, what happens is we sometimes tend to get carried away with so much data and information that is there in front of us that we forget what are we actually doing for. And for example, I mean, I know I'm like the youngest panelist here, but I'll try to make an attempt to explain this. Like, I love investigation movies and detective movies. Like, if you look at their process, they have a larger question in mind, and accordingly they follow a process. Similarly, in a thesis project we could do that. The second is the amount of complexity need not really define the success of a thesis project. Like, it's not always necessary to keep adding different layers of complexity to make it a successful thesis project, but rather focus on how are you addressing a certain kind of complexity at hand or in that particular situation. And the third point that I would like to make is, like most of the times, like this is to do with the design process that we follow, the the various drawings that we do, is that by the end of the semester or by the end of our final juries, we tend to the whole idea of space making is lost, or we it gets diluted because we are burdened. I mean, I understand, like you guys are burdened with list of requirements or whatnot, or you might be influenced by someone else's project, like, hey, that guy did a this kind of a diagram, maybe I should also attempt to do that, and so on. So not to get carried away by that, and try to keep that focus in mind and try to see what you can do to do justice to your topic, your selected site or whatever. And yeah, third thing, I mean, the next point that I would like to make is, sometimes unfortunately, with the amount of imagery that is there all around us, we tend to get carried away by that we forget about our intuitions and our reactions to certain things. Like, for example, if there are these kind of images that we see around, that, hey, that a meditative space should look like this, or hey, that museum should look like this, that we tend to not let our inner perception come through because of that influence. So yeah, I mean, these are some points that I would suggest you to look out for.
Yeah, sir, Chaya, sir, Sandeep, sir, you all have some comments where students are still getting into the phase of thesis.
Also, it would be wonderful if they would share their experiences as well, how choosing topics and sites have evolved through the years.
Yeah, I would say they haven't evolved much. It's always, it's always a student has a fascination for what's going on around her. And something in their own nature makes them select a particular kind of project. And I think a student who remains close to a kind of inner drive will find something to do. A student who gets connected to outer things, this is going on, so such and such is doing well, now it's fashionable to do so. So that kind of student will do a project which may be very impressive, but may not learn that much. And I think the thesis is a learning stage as much as it is a proving stage. It's not only just to prove that you can do things, it's also a way to go deeper into your own fascinations. And I think that is something which every student coming into thesis should keep in mind. Follow something that fascinates you, something that drives you inwardly, and not something which you think will be successful or you'll find it interesting, I think. So, and I think this, look, I did my thesis in 1975. So that's a long time ago, 45 years ago. It was still the same. Everybody in my class was selecting topics which came from their own internal drives, except some who wanted to be top of the class or something like that. And then actually they selected something which was doable, successful, etc., etc., etc. And they came out with the most boring projects. Some of us but were interesting. So I think you should keep to your own passions. Don't try to be somebody else. Yeah.
So you did your thesis in 1975. If somebody would come and tell you if you could do a thesis now, what would change? How would you approach it?
Well, I think I would go and spend a lot of time in the place where I was designing it. That's one thing I would do. As a student, I had a certain way of reading the situation. Which wasn't bad, but even that I'm not sure about. Because I think there are certain, and they come out at the time of your final year thesis. So if I look at my projects after that, all the projects that I've done since then, or even built, I think very, very careful with the present buildings, being just fitting in, trying to do minimum, all that, maybe it won't change.
We have a question from audience, that is, what are your thoughts on, anybody can pick this question, who is interested. What are your thoughts on architectural projects moving into a virtual realm?
Aren't they all in virtual realm?
Sorry?
Aren't all projects in a virtual realm?
Yeah,
Of course they are until you get it built or your client can.
No, but even the ones that get built, Chayan, it so happens that you build something and then, but your mind is still working with some virtual thing.
Absolutely.
Hey, you could have that also, and you could have that also, and nothing ever ends or finishes.
That was a good
And that palimpsest continues, of what Namrata was talking about. And so it's the primary happenings are in the virtual realm. And what you do get built are the sort of somewhat unsatisfactory realizations. Khan always used to say that the buildings that get built are never as good as the ideas. He says, I've never been able to do. If you look at his sketchbooks and you see how much goes on and on and on, and still at the end, on site, he makes a change somewhere. So it's the virtual project which is the real project. And the so-called real is a kind of manifestation which it got frozen in time.
The presenters, what are your thoughts on that? Because you all have just finished a project of thesis, and I'm very curious to listen to different perspectives.
Personally, I think the thesis was like, with all this discussion about selecting a topic, I think it ends up becoming more of a process where you, like Chaya sir said, you do start with something that you are passionate about or interested with, but eventually it's sort of like when you start, the idea that you have for how it will end never really completely manifests that way, because through the process and with all the different discussions with people that you have, you start realizing that there is so much more that you have. Like even now, if someone told me that, you have like 3 more months and you can work on your thesis, I would take it. I would be like, yeah, it's an opportunity to, because it's sort of a project that you're never really satisfied with whatever you have put out till the end. So all you can do is at that point explain your process up till then, and then have like a constructive discussion. So I think it's more about being open to that process rather than being very solid about what it is that you want to do and only that.
So we have some more questions from the audience, where one anonymous. Okay, does one's thesis have to be something that defines them? Is it permanent sort of a statement?
Okay, I think I looked at thesis as a way of finding your own process. Maybe not as a way to show it to somebody else, but you get so much time to invest in a certain way of working. You may not continue the process forever, but it's a way to explore what interests you and what guides you. So in a way, it's impactful for you, drawing all these multiple perspectives and your own experiences. But quite honestly, I wouldn't say nothing is permanent enough to leave to be that define your identity.
Wouldn't it be horrible to be given a final state, that you are now this, and forever you will be that only? It would be terrible, almost like genocide. This Bangladesh thing. You are being told you're gone, no more. And so I don't think it's a permanent thing at all. It's when a plant has a flower, the flower blossom and open, and then it will fall down, and it will be gone. It will go back to the soil. Then another flower will come. Of the flower, your project that is continually developing.
Well,
you lost me for a while.
Yeah.
No, I think it's very important to realize. I mean, I'm just saying. I think again, buildings, buildings or built forms live much longer than us, or whoever is designed, or even the user. So it's extremely important that as a profession, whether you're doing a product, a building as a product, a building as a living thing, whatever the word is, it's very important that we look at it as a designer, but through the use of the potential users, whoever. Sometimes they're invisible, sometimes they're very finite, and the people make a project. The way they use it, the way it evolves. It's actually the space that you give to the eventual user, whether it's a Churchgate station or whether it's a genocide museum. I mean, so that openness is very important, that when we visualize or contextualize whatever it is only, again, I'll come back to that, the time I gave that comment, how much should we build and how much should we leave it? So that, I think, evolves over the years. And so we evolve also as human beings. We also evolve through the way we design. So maybe as a student, we would be trying to impress, be very ambitious. And at this point, I would like to say, I think it's also the responsibility of the academics to also not push students to build minimum this many square feet of buildings. I think there is a mistake, or there is an irony or error in when somebody wants to do something. We say no, as a undergraduate thesis project, so and so college, we need to build this much. So what happens is we are also not allowing ourselves to blossom. So that investing the time looking internally, not only I think thesis is just another pause point in our journey. I think thesis, even your earlier semesters, then the practice, then your own practice, you're working somewhere else, what you learn through observation, through research, through day-to-day lives from nature, and how do you inculcate it. This is something which is one's own journey, and there is no set rules for that. However, having said that, I think it's very important to be extremely sensitive. I think that we are losing in terms of, I don't know, in our ambition to build, whether it's really required, how to redefine the brief and look at it. I think that these seeds have to be sown from our first semester, or whatever, whenever we start doing anything. So whether I'm doing my first semester project, or whether I'm looking at hydrology, how do I look at it through the years? How have I matured? How do the other subjects collaborate with each other? How do all the subjects collaborate with each other, and how does that continue? I know that compartmentalization of education continues sometimes, and then suddenly we are faced in practice when they all come together, and then it's either a functional deal or the bylaws, it's an effect of the bylaws. So how do we overcome that? That's very important, to sow those seeds in academics, so that they also inform practice. Because now, over the years, with my little, exposure and experience across, practices, what I've seen and whatever, little I've done, I've realized that it's very important to be yourself and do that, but evolve, so otherwise you are just you are just a whole cog in the wheel kind of a situation. However, to survive, we have to do certain things, but that is another topic altogether. But that should slowly start getting into practice. So I feel there is a lot of ambition. There is a lot of, what do I say? There's a lot of dreams that we have, and then we come to practice. Why can't we do most of them? Many of the times we can't do because of, I don't know, simple things like cost overruns or whatever else. So I feel it's important to continue that process as a practice. So whether it is the understanding of materials, context, climatology, and how that evolves as a form and a buildable format is something which we should cohesively look at, I feel. And sometimes they don't express themselves as some great kind of built environment, but experientially it's very rich sometimes, it's just the senses. So I don't know, so it's very immeasurable, I feel. So I think even in thesis topics, when we choose, it's not how much we build, what we do. I think it is looking inwards, what we want to do, what do we think we can relate to, and to complete a project, I feel is important. So that is where I feel is important, to what level I would like to complete a project, or even I'm taking up a thesis, or for that matter, in practice it's quite different. I can't leave it at an idea level unless I'm a concept architect. You have all these words now, all you had it earlier also. But when I do a thesis project also, I should eat as much as I can digest, kind of a situation. So I feel sometimes that is also important, that you might have great ideas, lovely sketches, lot of process models, but I don't know what happened at the end. It is not got manifested, the idea has not got manifested. So it's important to, and that manifestation is also a pause point. It's not the end of the product, it is a pause point. But at that pause point also there is a sense of completeness. We have to complete something, I feel. To that extent, I think we should look at it, because many times I feel when we are doing thesis projects or choosing, it is very, very ambitious, and then I don't have the time management, and I go into kinds of, it's nice to have confusion in the head, but there has to be limit. I have to control myself. So I think that's where mentors and the entire community of learners, as I would always say, is important to understand, look at what I am going to end at, and I think there has to be that level of crafting and completeness for whatever I do. It might still not be good enough or far from good, but there is a kind of satisfaction I should get, that I've learned this much across the process, and this is my culmination across 5 years, and then going forward I would do it wherever. It might be disappointing when I go to an office, I'm only doing SketchUp models, but so be it. That's another pause point. It's going to continue, So if you have that quest in you, I think that's important. I think that's what so there's no way to choose. There's no particular way to choose, topics, whatever. But I think that seeds should be sown, and you should start looking at what excites you, looking internally, and not be fashionable. I think that's one good, very good, nice word, Professor Chaya has used, But sometimes we get carried away. So be it. I mean, it's okay. It's another way of looking at things. It's not my way or the highway. Yeah.
When you said there's no particular process or like particular approach we need to take to pick a topic, I think this brings me back to Satya Prakash sir's question he has put on the chat. And most schools' thesis process has become predictable: topic, case studies, program, site, concept, etc., etc. So his question is this structured path for project limits the possible broader potential? I think architect Solachi Ramanathan can address this question.
Thanks for the question. I mean, I think simply, yes, I think it definitely does. It is a very limiting process. Rather, I think it would be important to really, as Professor Chaya said, first is to identify really what you are passionate about, and also identify the key question and your key ambition. And that may evolve, but I think that clarity of having that in the beginning is very important. And even when we do analysis, it's not analysis for analysis sake. This is something that my professor told me, and it was it really stayed with me, that your analysis should be equivalent to constructing an alternative vision. And that sort of informs your design process.
Design process itself is such a thing that everybody have a different perspective on it, and sometimes there is a structured way one would have incorporated over a period of time, and versus there are some of us who are still discovering what our process is going to be. So do you have from your experience where you have transitioned from academics to profession and practice for so many years, what are your thoughts on a process to arrive at design, or arrive at to finish a thesis?
So I think the process is important in the sense that it gives you some structure as architect Sandeep Sen said, that to kind of complete it. And it's only when you see that completed project can you actually learn from it, and then then kind of question it, and then kind of move forward. So that structure and process is important. So choosing a site is important. Case studies are important, but is that the starting point? I'm not sure. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
If I'm allowed to chip in a bit.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so I think I personally feel that your question, I think there's a lot institutions should control this, because I think the canvas is open. There's so much you can do. So I think institutions and also the year which is handling it, I think they should always look at the time that is given. I think I might sound repeating what I said before, but I think it's always important to work backwards, because the thesis that you give a student, there is so many months that you're working on it, right? So I think you have to always work backwards. So talking about the structure, of course, there are some universities and institutions which actually structure it very well. It also depends on who is running the year. When you work backwards, and also know that, because the common problem we always see, I think we have already discussed this in this the session, that we always tend to get carried away with the research, and we get, even when you look at the presentations we had today, when you have a overall view of that, you would always, most of us would have thought that maybe he's going on and on about the process. Where is the product? I mean, do we have enough? Even if that student was given about so many minutes to do a presentation, we would get carried away with actually the research part, and where is the actual product. And we also saw today that some had to run through the spaces, run through the actual product at the end of the day, because I think the whole exercise in doing a research project or a comprehensive design project is to do a building. I mean, that's what we are looking at. We tried or to do a space, but to do an end product. I think Sandeep Senji also was trying to talk about where is the last bit? Have we lost on it? It's just that when there is no proper time management, when you don't know to work backwards to see that I have to finish the research part within this time framework, because I think it's also part of the educational process, trying to groom an architect or trying to educate an architect, time management. No client is going to, we are not going to be academics all along. I mean, there are some of us who are fortunate to be doing buildings and also being academics at the same time. But you also know that you have to manage clients. You also have to know that you're not going to be given an unlimited time to do this. So I think you have to be very clever in choosing your project, in choosing your topic. I think but I think that the bottom line is that try to pick something where you're going to enjoy. I think the passion and you enjoying it, whether an actual project or is it, I mean, if it's sort of project, academic project or a real project, you have to enjoy it. I think just pick something because of the time framework, and also because I think you have to pick something that you're going to enjoy. And when you enjoy, you can, anyone would see that the end product, from the end product, whether they've enjoyed the project or not. I hope I didn't sound repeating myself again and again, but I think something that I want to drive into the heads of students, these are these basics that you go through when you choose a project.
Agreed. So I think we are running out of time. So I would like to thank all the participants who presented your thesis work, your approach that widened our perspectives to look forward to our thesis semester, and also comments from all the panelists, senior panelists and the young panelists. I thank you all so much for spending a good time, a good Sunday time here in this session. And there are so many more questions that are flowing in the question box. We will be addressing all of those questions on the DU story, and we will continue this discussion, and I hope you take back something and reflect upon and continue this conversation outside this platform also. Over to Varna.
With Student Share, we hope to create a dialogue between the South Asian community of students and emerging designers. We hope this will continue with meaningful engagement and mentorship between design students across South Asia. Thank you so much for making it such a success. I would like to congratulate our participating presenters for the day for sharing their work and their wonderful presentations, and also generating a conversation between the students and architects within the South Asian community. I would really like to thank our mentors who are absolutely incredible, Chaya sir, Sandeep Sen sir, Shayan, Prajal, Solachi, Josefa, Madhuri and Chandrabanu, who've been extremely gracious in sharing their time and valuable insight into thesis, student work, process, and way forward in general. Bhumika and Ayushma, who moderated our session and engaged us in a conversation today. The audience, I really hope it comprised of students who are considering thesis. With this, I would like to thank you all and hope you stay connected with Design United. I would also like to thank Clayworks and the DU team, Janvi and Iram especially. Iram, could you please end today's conversation with the upcoming series of events at Design United? Thank you so much. Have a lovely Sunday.
Thank you, Architect Neelkant, Architect Sandeep, Architect Shayan, Architect Salachi, Zephyr, Prajal, Madhuri, Chandra, and all of our student presenters for your wonderful presentations and insightful discussions today. Thanks to our moderators, Ayushma and Bhumika again for your interesting and thought-provoking conversation. We'd like to extend our gratitude to Clayworks for supporting this webinar and all of our webinars. So far, Design United has successfully completed numerous design conversations, and we are glad to have conducted the first ever student share session. Also, we have many more exciting speakers lined up with designers across the spectrum joining us to share their thoughts. We're currently gearing up to celebrate Design United's first anniversary with our first DU festival, Design Forward, this July. So join us for interesting conversations across the South Asian region to witness works of various designers. Look out more for updates on our social media page. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel, and also do fill in the feedback form that will pop up on your browser about today's session. Join us and stay inspired. Until next time, thank you, stay safe and take care. I request both the presenters, speakers and moderators to kindly stay back. We'd like to listen to your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chaya sir. Thank you, Sandeep Sen sir. Thank you, Shayan Kumar Das sir. Thank you,
to all.
Architect Solachi, Architect Huzaifa, Architect Rajal, and all the students for braving up and presenting the thesis. And if there's any feedback you would like to share with Design United, we are very open to all kinds of feedback. So is there anything you would like us to?
One feedback.
Yes.
And that is, don't differentiate between senior and young.
Yeah. Yes.
Absolutely. No discrimination. They actually, absolutely.
Yes.
It makes you feel even older.
I enjoyed everything that Solachi said, or Huzaifa said, or what was the third one. But so, I mean, it's as important what they are saying as what any of us are saying. So
Yes,
just
we
because
do.
I have white hair should not make me a different category.